Life doesn't go according to plan. That promotion you worked so hard for went to someone else. The relationship you invested years in fell apart. Your health betrayed you. Your dreams crumbled. The future you imagined dissolved into something unrecognizable. And in those moments, when everything feels like it's falling apart, you're left wondering, how do I find peace in this chaos? How do I keep going when nothing makes sense? 2,500 years ago, a prince named Siddhartha Gautama asked himself the same question. He had everything: wealth, power, beauty, pleasure, and yet he saw that none of it could protect him or anyone else from the fundamental chaos of existence. So he left it all behind to find an answer. What he discovered became Buddhism, a path not to escape chaos, but to find peace within it. This isn't a story about becoming a monk or rejecting the world. This is about discovering a profound shift in perspective that can transform your relationship with life's inevitable difficulties. Because the Buddha didn't teach us to avoid suffering, he taught us something far more powerful: how to meet it with wisdom, compassion, and unshakable peace. Today, we're going deep into Buddhist teachings on finding peace when life doesn't go your way. We'll explore the Buddha's core insights, ancient practices, and practical wisdom you can apply right now in the middle of whatever chaos you're facing. Because peace isn't found by controlling life, it's found by understanding it. Let's begin. Part 1. The Prince Who Discovered the Truth. To understand Buddhist teachings on chaos and peace, we need to start with the man who discovered them. Siddhartha Gautama was born around 563 BCE in Lumbini, in what is now Nepal. His father was a king, and according to legend, his birth was accompanied by extraordinary signs. A sage predicted that the child would become either a great king or a great spiritual teacher. His father, wanting his son to follow in his footsteps, decided to shield him from anything that might inspire spiritual seeking. So Siddhartha grew up in unimaginable luxury. He lived in 3 palaces, one for each season. He was surrounded by beauty, entertainment, and pleasure. He was trained in the arts, warfare, and statecraft. He had the finest food, the best education, and every comfort imaginable. At 16, he married a beautiful princess named Yasodhara, and they had a son, Rahula. By all external measures, Siddhartha had won at life. He had everything a person could want. But something was wrong. Despite the pleasure, despite the success, despite the love, Siddhartha felt a deep unease. He sensed that beneath the surface of his gilded cage lay a truth his father was desperately trying to hide from him. And one day, that truth broke through. The story tells us that Siddhartha ventured outside the palace walls for the first time and encountered what Buddhists call the 4 sights. First, he saw an old man, bent and frail, struggling to walk. Siddhartha was shocked. "What happened to him?" he asked his charioteer. "This is old age," came the reply. "It happens to everyone." Second, he saw a sick person racked with disease and pain. "This is illness," his charioteer explained. "No one can escape it." Third, he saw a corpse being carried to cremation. "This is death," he was told. "It comes for us all, regardless of wealth or status." These sights shattered Siddhartha's world. All the luxury, all the pleasure, all the carefully constructed illusion of permanence, none of it could protect him or anyone he loved from old age, sickness, and death. The chaos he had been shielded from was not an aberration, it was the fundamental nature of existence. Everything he loved would age, everything would get sick, everything would die, including him, including everyone he cared about. But then he saw a 4th sight, a wandering ascetic, a monk with a serene expression, someone who seemed at peace despite having nothing.
And in that moment, Siddhartha realized something profound. Peace was possible, even in the face of chaos. But it wouldn't come from trying to control life or hide from its difficulties. It would come from understanding the nature of existence itself. That night, at age 29, Siddhartha made a decision that would change the course of human history. He left his palace, his wife, his newborn son, his wealth, and his inheritance. He shaved his head, put on simple robes, and set out to find the solution to suffering. This wasn't a rejection of love or responsibility. It was the ultimate act of love, seeking a truth that could free not just himself, but all beings from suffering. For 6 years, Siddhartha studied with the greatest spiritual teachers of his time. He mastered advanced meditation techniques that allowed him to access extraordinary states of consciousness. But these states, however blissful, were temporary. When they ended, suffering remained. So he tried the opposite approach, extreme asceticism. He ate almost nothing, punished his body, and pushed himself to the brink of death. But this too led nowhere. Suffering remained. Finally, exhausted and near death, Siddhartha realized both extremes were wrong. Luxury hadn't brought peace, and self-punishment hadn't either. There had to be a middle way. He accepted food from a village girl, restored his strength, and sat down under a Bodhi tree with a simple vow. He would not get up until he understood the nature of suffering and how to be free from it. For 49 days he sat in meditation. Legends say he was tempted by Mara, the embodiment of delusion, who tried to distract him with visions of pleasure, threaten him with visions of terror, and convince him to give up. But Siddhartha remained still, looking deeper and deeper into the nature of mind and reality. And then, on the full moon night of May, he had a breakthrough. He saw the truth. He became the Buddha, which means the awakened one. What did he see? He saw that suffering is caused by our fundamental misunderstanding of reality. We think things are permanent when they're constantly changing. We think we're solid, separate selves when we're actually fluid processes. We cling to pleasure and push away pain, creating an exhausting war with reality. And most importantly, he saw that this pattern could be broken. Peace was possible, not by changing reality, but by changing our relationship with it. The Buddha spent the remaining 45 years of his life teaching what he discovered. He didn't claim to be a god or a prophet. He was a teacher, a physician diagnosing the human condition and offering a cure. His teachings weren't based on faith or authority, but on direct investigation of experience. He invited people to test his teachings for themselves, to see if they worked. And at the core of everything he taught was this insight: life doesn't go according to plan because life isn't meant to go according to plan. Chaos, change, and uncertainty aren't bugs in the system, they're features. And the moment you truly understand this, not just intellectually, but in the depths of your being, everything shifts. You stop fighting reality and start dancing with it.
Part 2. The Four Noble Truths, the Diagnosis. The Buddha's first teaching after his enlightenment is called the Four Noble Truths. These aren't religious doctrines, they're a diagnosis of the human condition, structured like a medical treatment: the illness, the cause, the prognosis, and the cure. Let's break them down. The first noble truth, dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness. The Buddha's first truth is often translated as life is suffering, but this translation misses the subtlety. The Pali word is dukkha, which means something closer to unsatisfactoriness, stress, or out of alignment. It's the sense that something is always slightly off, that even in moments of happiness, there's an underlying anxiety or dissatisfaction. The Buddha identified 3 types of dukkha. First, there's the dukkha of obvious suffering: physical pain, emotional anguish, loss, disappointment, fear. This is what we normally think of as suffering. When you lose your job, when a relationship ends, when you get sick, this is dukkha dukkha, suffering suffering. Second, there's the dukkha of change. Even pleasant experiences contain suffering because they don't last. You finally get that thing you wanted, and the joy is real but temporary. Soon you're anxious about losing it or already looking for the next thing. You eat your favorite meal, and it's delicious, but the pleasure fades with each bite. You fall in love, and it's ecstatic, but you know it will change. This is viparinama dukkha, the suffering inherent in impermanence. It's the bittersweet nature of all conditioned things. Third, and most subtly, there's the dukkha of existence itself, sankhara dukkha. This is the exhaustion of constantly having to maintain yourself, to keep the show going, to be someone. It's the suffering of having a body that needs food, sleep, and care. It's the suffering of having a mind that's never quite satisfied, always wanting, always comparing, always becoming. Even when nothing is obviously wrong, there's a subtle stress in just being a self. Now, this might sound depressing, but the Buddha wasn't a pessimist. He was a realist. He wasn't saying life is only suffering. He was saying suffering is an unavoidable part of life, and denying this leads to more suffering. It's like a doctor saying you have a disease. That's not pessimism. That's the first step toward healing. You can't treat a disease you won't acknowledge. The key insight is this. Much of our suffering comes from resisting the fact that life includes suffering. We think something has gone wrong when things don't go our way. We think we've failed when we're unhappy. We think peace means never experiencing difficulty. But the Buddha is saying, no, difficulty is guaranteed. The question is, how do you meet it? Think about your own life. How much of your suffering is the actual painful event, and how much is your resistance to it, your story about what it means, your belief that it shouldn't be happening? Someone cuts you off in traffic. The event itself is momentary, but then your mind spins a story. That person is an idiot. People are so rude. This always happens to me. My whole day is ruined. The event was 5 seconds. The suffering lasts hours because you're fighting with reality. The first noble truth isn't meant to make you depressed. It's meant to wake you up to what's already happening so you can respond wisely rather than reactively. When you stop pretending life should be easy, you can finally meet it as it is. The second noble truth, samudaya, the origin of suffering. If the first noble truth is the diagnosis, the second is the cause. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from tanya, usually translated as craving or thirst. But again, the translation can be misleading. Tanya isn't just wanting things, it's a specific kind of compulsive grasping that comes from not understanding reality. There are 3 types of tanya. First, there's craving for pleasant experiences, kama tanya. This is the endless pursuit of pleasure, comfort, and happiness. It's not that pleasure is bad, it's that we cling to it, try to make it permanent, and suffer when it inevitably changes. We chase the next high, the next achievement, the next relationship, thinking this will finally make me happy. But the satisfaction is temporary. The goalposts move. You eat your favorite meal and it's delicious, but the pleasure fades with each bite. You fall in love and it's ecstatic, but you know it will change. The second is craving for existence, bhavatanya. This is wanting to be somebody, to matter, to be recognized and validated. It's the exhausting project of building and maintaining an identity. We crave success not just for the material benefits, but because we think it will prove we're worthwhile. We crave love not just for connection, but because we think it will fill the hole inside us. We're constantly becoming, never just being. The third is craving for non-existence, vibhavatanya. This is the flip side, wanting to escape, to not feel, to disappear. When life gets too painful, we crave oblivion. This manifests as addiction, numbing behaviors, or in extreme cases, suicidal ideation. It's still craving, just pointed in the opposite direction. But here's the deeper insight. All these cravings arise from a fundamental ignorance or avidya about the nature of reality. We crave because we misperceive reality in three specific ways. First, we see things as permanent when they're impermanent, anicca. We treat our youth as if it will last forever. We assume our job, our health, our relationships are stable, and then we're shocked and devastated when they change, even though change is the only constant. Second, we see things as satisfactory when they're inherently unsatisfactory, dukkha. We think the right circumstances will bring lasting happiness. We think, if I just get this promotion, this house, this partner, then I'll be content. But we get those things and the contentment is fleeting. The goalposts move. Third, we see things as having a solid, independent self when they're actually empty of inherent existence, anatta. This is the deepest and most radical Buddhist teaching. We think we're a solid, continuous me that exists independently. But if you look closely, you can't find this self. What you find is a constantly changing process of thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions. The self is more like a river than a rock, always flowing, never the same from moment to moment. This misperception of reality leads to craving, and craving leads to suffering. We crave permanence in an impermanent world. We crave satisfaction from things that can't provide lasting satisfaction. We crave security for a self that doesn't exist in the way we think it does. It's like trying to build a house on quicksand. No matter how hard you work, it won't hold. Here's a modern example. You get a notification on your phone. You feel a little hit of dopamine. You want more, so you check again. Nothing new. You feel disappointed, maybe even anxious. You check again. This is craving in action. The pleasure of the notification is real, but fleeting. You're trying to make it last by getting another one. But each hit is equally temporary, so you need to keep chasing. The phone itself isn't the problem. The problem is the craving, the compulsive reaching for something to fill a hole that can't be filled externally. Or consider a more painful example. Your relationship ends. The pain of loss is natural and unavoidable. But then your mind starts spinning. I'll never find love again. I'm going to be alone forever. I'm unlovable. My life is over. This is craving for the past to be different, for the future to be certain, for your self-worth to be validated. The craving amplifies the suffering exponentially. The second noble truth is actually liberating because it means you're not a victim of random suffering. There's a cause, and if there's a cause, there can be a solution. You're not helpless, you're just confused, and confusion can be cleared up. The third noble truth, nirodha, the cessation of suffering. This is the good news. The Buddha didn't just diagnose the problem and explain its cause. He said there's a cure. It's possible to end suffering, not by getting everything you want, but by seeing through the craving that causes suffering in the first place. Nirodha means cessation or extinction, specifically the extinction of craving and ignorance. When you fully understand the impermanent, unsatisfactory, and selfless nature of all phenomena, craving naturally falls away. And when craving falls away, suffering ends. What remains is nibbana, which literally means blowing out, like extinguishing a flame. This doesn't mean you become a zombie with no preferences or feelings. It means you stop being driven by compulsive craving. You can still enjoy pleasure without clinging to it. You can still feel pain without it destroying you. You can engage with life fully without being at war with reality. Think of it this way. Imagine you're watching a movie and you're totally absorbed in it. You're terrified during the scary parts, crying during the sad parts, angry at the villains, celebrating with the heroes.
You've temporarily forgotten that you're sitting safely in a theater watching pixels on a screen. Then suddenly you remember, oh, it's just a movie. You don't stop engaging with the story, but you're not suffering anymore. You're free to experience the full range of emotions without being destroyed by them. Nirvana is like that. You see through the illusion that your thoughts and emotions are absolutely real and solid. You see they're more like weather patterns, arising, passing, changing. You still experience them, but you're not at their mercy. You have perspective, you have space, you have freedom. The third noble truth is a promise. Liberation is possible. Not someday in some other realm, but now through understanding. Your peace doesn't depend on your circumstances being perfect. It depends on seeing through the confusion that makes you crave circumstances to be different than they are.
The fourth noble truth, Magga, the path. The fourth noble truth is the prescription, the noble eightfold path, a practical guide for ending suffering. This isn't a linear sequence you complete step by step. It's 8 interconnected practices you develop simultaneously, each supporting the others. The path is traditionally divided into 3 categories: wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. We'll explore each element in detail later, but here's the overview. Wisdom, Panna. Right view, Samaditi, understanding the 4 noble truths and the nature of reality. Right intention, Samma Sankalpa, cultivating intentions of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. Ethical conduct, Sila. Right speech, Samma Vaka, speaking truthfully, kindly, and helpfully. Right action, Samma Kamanta, acting ethically, not harming others. Right livelihood, Samma Ajiva, earning a living in ways that don't cause harm. Mental discipline, Samadhi. Right effort, Samma Vayama, cultivating wholesome mental states and abandoning unwholesome ones. Right mindfulness, Samma Sati, maintaining clear awareness of body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. And right concentration, Samma Samadhi, developing focused, stable attention through meditation. The genius of this path is that it addresses suffering at every level: how you think, how you act, and how you train your mind. It's not just about feeling better through meditation, it's a complete transformation of how you live. The 4 noble truths aren't abstract philosophy. They're a practical framework for understanding and responding to life's inevitable chaos. When life doesn't go your way, you're not just randomly suffering. You're caught in a specific pattern, misunderstanding reality, craving for it to be different, and suffering as a result. And there's a way out. See reality clearly, let go of compulsive craving, and walk the path of wisdom, ethics, and mental training. This is the Buddha's gift to humanity, not a promise that life will be easy, but a proven method for finding peace regardless of circumstances. Let's dive deeper into how this actually works. Part 3. Impermanence, the wisdom of change. If you want to understand Buddhist teachings on finding peace in chaos, you have to understand impermanence, anicca. This is the most fundamental characteristic of existence, and most of our suffering comes from not accepting it. Everything changes, everything. Your body is changing right now, cells dying, new ones being born. Your mind is changing, thoughts arising and passing, emotions shifting. Your relationships are changing, your circumstances are changing, the world is changing. Nothing stays the same, not even for a moment. This seems obvious intellectually, but we don't live like it's true. We treat things as if they're stable and permanent. We make plans assuming tomorrow will be like today. We invest our identity in things that will inevitably change, and then we're shocked, hurt, and angry when change happens.
The Buddha taught that there are three characteristics of all conditioned phenomena: impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. These aren't separate truths, they're interconnected. Because things are impermanent, trying to hold on to them causes suffering. Because things are impermanent and unsatisfactory, they can't be what we truly are. They can't be self. Let's explore impermanence deeply because it's the key to understanding everything else. The levels of impermanence. There are different scales at which we can observe impermanence. The Buddha talked about momentary impermanence, the fact that every phenomenon arises and passes in every moment. Modern physics confirms this. What looks like a solid table is actually atoms vibrating, mostly empty space, constantly in flux. Your body replaces most of its cells every 7 years. The you from 10 years ago literally doesn't exist anymore. Not a single atom is the same. But you don't need physics to see this. Close your eyes and observe your breath. Notice how it's always changing. In, out, never still. Notice your thoughts. They arise from nowhere, linger for a moment, and disappear. Where do they go? Where were they before they arose? Notice sensations in your body, that itch, that tension, that comfort, all arising and passing, changing every moment. Then there's the impermanence of seasons and stages. Your body goes through infancy, childhood, adolescence, adulthood, middle age, old age. Each stage is radically different. The teenager you were would barely recognize the adult you've become, and the person you'll be in 20 years will barely recognize who you are now. Every relationship has seasons: the honeymoon phase, the power struggle phase, the deep commitment phase, sometimes the ending phase. Nothing stays in one state. Finally, there's ultimate impermanence, death. Everything that comes into being passes out of being. Every person you know will die. Every institution will crumble. Every mountain will erode. The sun itself will eventually burn out. Nothing escapes this. The Buddha said that of all meditations, the meditation on death is supreme because it cuts through our denial and forces us to face reality. Why we resist impermanence? Because permanence is comforting. Change is threatening. We want to believe that we can create security, that we can build a life that will last, that we can protect ourselves and the people we love from loss. This desire for permanence shows up everywhere. We try to freeze moments, taking photos, recording videos, journaling, as if we can hold on to experience. We try to preserve our youth with anti-aging products. We try to make relationships permanent with marriage vows. We try to achieve lasting happiness through success and possessions. None of this is wrong in itself. The problem comes when we believe it will actually stop change. We also resist impermanence because our sense of self depends on continuity. If you ask yourself, "Who am I?" you probably think of a continuous identity stretching from your childhood to now. You're the same person who had that first day of school, that first heartbreak, that big achievement. But are you really? How much of your body is the same? How many of your thoughts, beliefs, and values are the same? The person you were at 7 is almost completely different from who you are now. So who is this you that supposedly stays the same? The Buddhist insight is that the self is also impermanent. What we call self is actually a constantly changing process that we treat as a thing. It's like a river. We say the Mississippi River as if it's one stable thing, but a river is just water flowing. The water that was in the river yesterday is in the ocean now. New water has taken its place. The river is a process, not a thing. So are you. This is threatening to our sense of identity. We want to be somebody solid, somebody real, somebody that matters. But Buddhism says you are real, you do matter, but not in the way you think. You're not a solid thing. You're an ever-changing dance of matter and energy, consciousness and experience, and there's profound freedom in recognizing this.
The liberating power of impermanence. Here's where it gets interesting. Impermanence isn't just bad news, it's also incredibly liberating. Because everything changes, nothing is set in stone. Your current suffering won't last. Your mistakes don't define you forever. Failure isn't final. You can always begin again. This very moment, no matter how stuck you feel, things are changing. New possibilities are arising. You're not condemned to be who you were in the past. Every moment is a fresh start. This is the flip side of impermanence that people often miss. Yes, good things don't last, but neither do bad things. The Buddha told a story to illustrate this. A woman's child died, and she was devastated, unable to let go of the body. She went to the Buddha begging him to bring her child back to life. The Buddha said he could help her, but first she needed to bring him a mustard seed from a household that had never experienced death. The woman went from house to house. At each one she asked, "Has anyone in your family ever died?" Every household had lost someone. A parent, a child, a spouse, a sibling. She couldn't find a single home untouched by death. Finally, she understood. Death is universal. Loss is part of life. Her grief was valid, but she wasn't being singled out for suffering. This was the human condition. She returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with understanding. She cremated her child and became a devoted student. She found peace not by bringing back what was lost, but by accepting impermanence as the nature of existence. This is the path through grief and loss, not to deny it or bypass it, but to place it in the larger context of impermanence. Everything you love will be lost, either through change or death. This isn't a reason to not love. It's a reason to love fully, right now, without holding back, because there are no guarantees. Impermanence makes love precious, not pointless. Practicing with impermanence. How do you actually work with impermanence in your daily life? Here are practical approaches rooted in Buddhist tradition. First, notice the small changes. When you're eating, notice how the taste changes from the first bite to the last. When you're walking, notice how each step is different. When you're in conversation, notice how the mood shifts from moment to moment. This trains your mind to see the changeability of experience rather than treating it as static. Second, use transitions as meditation. When you wake up, notice you're transitioning from sleep to waking. When you leave your house, notice you're transitioning from inside to outside. When you finish work, notice you're transitioning from work mode to personal time. These moments of change are opportunities to practice awareness of impermanence. Third, contemplate the impermanence of your body. Look at old photos of yourself. Notice how much you've changed. Imagine yourself at 80 if you live that long. What will you look like? How will you move? This isn't morbid, it's realistic, and it helps you appreciate the body you have right now, in this moment, rather than taking it for granted. Fourth, contemplate the impermanence of your relationships. Everyone you love will either leave you or you'll leave them. That's not pessimism, that's reality. How does this change how you want to show up in your relationships today? Does it make you want to hold grudges, or does it make you want to forgive quickly? Does it make you want to take people for granted, or does it make you want to appreciate them while they're here? Fifth, contemplate the impermanence of your mind states. When you're angry, notice that the anger isn't solid, it's arising and passing moment by moment. When you're depressed, notice that even depression changes. Sometimes it's heavier, sometimes lighter. When you're happy, enjoy it fully, knowing it won't last, and that's okay.
Everything is weather passing through the sky of awareness. One of the most powerful Buddhist practices is called "this too shall pass." It's simple but profound. When something difficult is happening, you say to yourself, "This too shall pass," not to bypass the difficulty, but to remember it's not permanent. When something wonderful is happening, you say, "This too shall pass," not to ruin the joy, but to savor it fully, knowing its impermanence makes it precious. The Buddhist teaching on impermanence isn't meant to make you nihilistic or depressed. It's meant to help you stop fighting reality. When you accept that everything changes, you stop clinging so desperately. You can enjoy what's here while it's here and let it go when it's gone. You can grieve your losses without being destroyed by them. You can fail and try again. You can change and grow. Impermanence means that when life doesn't go your way, it won't stay that way. The chaos you're experiencing right now is changing, even as you experience it. Nothing is set in stone. The question is, can you be present with what is, while it is, without demanding it be permanent? That's where peace lives.
Part 4. The self that suffers doesn't exist. This is where Buddhism gets really radical and really hard to grasp. The Buddha taught anatta, usually translated as non-self or no self. This is one of the most misunderstood teachings, but it's also one of the most liberating. Understanding anatta transforms your relationship with suffering because it reveals that the one you think is suffering isn't quite real in the way you believe. Let's be clear from the start. The Buddha wasn't saying you don't exist. He wasn't teaching nihilism. He was teaching something far more subtle and profound. He was saying that what you call self or I isn't what you think it is. It's not a solid, independent, unchanging thing. It's a process, a construction, an illusion of solidity created by the mind. The 5 aggregates. To understand non-self, we need to understand what we are. The Buddha analyzed human experience into 5 categories called the 5 aggregates or khandhas. Form, rupa. This is the physical body, flesh, bones, organs, the material aspect of your existence. It's what you can see and touch. Feeling, vedana. This is the immediate feeling tone of experience, whether pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Before you even think about an experience, there's a basic sense of like, dislike, or indifference. Perception, sanya. This is how you recognize and label things. When you see a tree, perception is what lets you know it's a tree and not something else. It's the interpretive function. Mental formations, sankhara. These are all the mental activities, thoughts, emotions, intentions, desires, fears. It includes everything your mind does, thinking, planning, remembering, imagining, judging. And consciousness, vijnana. This is the bare awareness of experience. It's the knowing quality that's present when you see, hear, touch, taste, smell, or think. Now here's the key insight. The Buddha said that none of these 5 aggregates is self. You are not your body, because your body is constantly changing, aging, getting sick. You can lose parts of your body and still be you. You are not your feelings, because feelings are constantly shifting. You are not your perceptions, because they're conditioned by your culture and experience. You are not your mental formations, because they arise and pass without your control. And you are not consciousness, because consciousness depends on contact with objects. When there's nothing to be conscious of, consciousness ceases. The Buddha would go through each aggregate and ask, is this permanent or impermanent? Impermanent. Is it satisfactory or unsatisfactory? Unsatisfactory. Can it be considered self if it's impermanent and unsatisfactory? No. He would conclude, this is not mine, this is not me, this is not myself. So if you're not your body, not your feelings, not your perceptions, not your thoughts, and not your consciousness, then what are you? Buddhism says
You're not a thing at all. You're a process, a flowing stream of these 5 aggregates, constantly changing, constantly interacting. The self is like a rainbow. It appears solid and real from a distance, but when you look closely, you can't find anything substantial. It's just light refracting through water droplets. It exists, but not in the way it appears to exist. The suffering of self. This teaching matters because the illusion of self is the root cause of suffering. Here's how it works. You construct a sense of self. I am this kind of person. I have these qualities. I need these things. I deserve this treatment. This self feels solid and real and very important. And then reality threatens this self. Someone criticizes you and it feels like they're attacking your very existence. You fail at something and it feels like your worth as a person is being questioned. You lose your job and it feels like you've lost your identity. Someone doesn't love you back and it feels like you're fundamentally unlovable. You get old and it feels like you're ceasing to exist. All these forms of suffering are amplified by the belief in a solid self that can be damaged or threatened. But if you see through the illusion of self, if you realize there's no solid thing to defend or maintain, suffering loses its grip. Criticism is just words and sounds. Failure is just an event, not a judgment on your worth. Loss is just change, not the destruction of who you are. You're not a fragile, solid self that needs constant protection and validation. You're a flowing process that can't be fundamentally damaged. Think of it this way. Imagine a wave on the ocean. The wave rises and falls, crashes on the shore and disappears. If the wave believed it was a separate, independent thing, it would be terrified. I'm going to hit that shore and cease to exist. But the wave is not separate from the ocean. It's a temporary form that water is taking. When the wave crashes, the water doesn't disappear. It just returns to the ocean it never really left. You're like that wave. You feel like a separate self, but you're actually an inseparable part of the whole universe. You're made of the same atoms that were once in stars. You're breathing the same air that every person who ever lived breathed. You're eating food that comes from the sun's energy. You're not separate. You're intimately interconnected with everything. And when this body dies, the elements that made it up don't disappear. They just take new forms.
The freedom of non-self. Understanding non-self doesn't make you cold or disconnected. It makes you free. Free from the exhausting project of being somebody, of maintaining an identity, of constantly proving your worth. Free from taking everything so personally. Free from the fear of death, because what was there to die? The Zen teacher Shunryu Suzuki said, "You are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement." This captures the paradox beautifully. There's nothing wrong with you because there's no solid you to be wrong, and yet you can still grow and develop because you're a process, not a thing. This teaching also cultivates profound compassion. When you see that everyone is suffering from the same illusion of self, you can't hate them anymore. That person who hurt you, they're also trapped in the illusion of self, defending what they think they are, fighting for survival. They're suffering too. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but it helps you respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. There's a famous Zen story about this. A master was dying and his student was crying. The master said, "Why are you crying?" The student said, "Because you're dying and I'll miss you." The master laughed and said, "Who is it that's dying? Who is it that will miss me? Can you find this one?" The student looked and looked, but couldn't find a solid self anywhere. And in that moment, he understood. Grief remained, but the suffering of grief, the story that I am losing something essential to me, dissolved. Practicing with non-self. How do you work with this teaching? It's not something you can just understand intellectually. You have to investigate it directly in your experience.
First, try to find yourself. Seriously, right now, look for yourself. Are you your body? Notice that you can be aware of your body, so you must be separate from it. Are you your thoughts? Notice that thoughts come and go without your permission. They arise from nowhere. If they were you, you could control them. Are you the awareness that knows all this? But awareness changes too, sometimes clear, sometimes foggy, sometimes absent in deep sleep. Keep looking. Where is this self? The more you look, the more you'll see that what you call self is actually a collection of changing experiences held together by memory and a sense of continuity. It's like a movie. The individual frames are all different, but they move so fast that you see a continuous story. The self is that kind of illusion, not unreal, but not solid in the way you think. Second, notice the stories you tell about yourself. I'm the kind of person who, I always, I never. These stories create the illusion of a fixed self, but are they actually true? Haven't you sometimes acted completely differently than these stories suggest? The stories are not describing a real self, they're creating one. Third, practice letting go of identification. When a thought arises, instead of thinking, I am thinking, try noticing, there is thinking. When an emotion arises, instead of I am angry, try there is anger. This subtle shift creates space between awareness and experience. You're not denying the experience, you're just not claiming ownership of it. It's happening, but it's not happening to a solid you. Fourth, practice meditating on interconnection. Look at anything in your environment and trace its causes. A cup of coffee required coffee beans, which required soil, rain, sun, farmers, transportation, processing, a cup, water, heat. It required the entire universe to come together to create this one cup of coffee. Nothing exists independently. Everything is interdependent, including you. You're not a separate self. You're a meeting point of infinite causes and conditions. The teaching of non-self is ultimately freedom. Freedom from the prison of me, mine, and I. Freedom from the constant anxiety of self-maintenance. Freedom from taking everything personally. Freedom from the fear of losing yourself because there's no solid self to lose. And this freedom is peace, not because your circumstances are perfect, but because the one who needs circumstances to be perfect doesn't exist in the way you thought.
Part 5. The Practice of Mindfulness. If impermanence and non-self are the core insights, mindfulness is the core practice. In Pali, the language of early Buddhist texts, it's called sati, which means awareness, attention, remembering. Mindfulness is the practice of being fully present with your experience as it unfolds, without judgment or reactivity. This has become incredibly popular in the West, often divorced from its Buddhist roots. Corporations teach mindfulness for productivity. Apps teach mindfulness for stress relief. This isn't wrong. Mindfulness does help with stress and focus. But in Buddhism, mindfulness is much more than a relaxation technique. It's a tool for liberation, a way of seeing reality clearly so you can be free from suffering. What mindfulness actually is. Let's be precise about what we mean by mindfulness. It's not just paying attention. You can pay attention to something while being completely caught up in judgment, fantasy, or reactivity. Mindfulness has specific qualities. Present moment awareness. You're here, now, not lost in memories of the past or fantasies about the future. Your body is always in the present moment. Your mind is often somewhere else. Mindfulness brings them together. Non-judgmental. You're not labeling experiences as good or bad, right or wrong. You're simply observing what is. This doesn't mean you don't have preferences. It means you're not at war with reality. Non-reactive.
You're not automatically following your impulses or habitual patterns. There's a space between stimulus and response where you can choose how to act. Investigative. You're curious about your experience, exploring it rather than just reacting to it. What does this emotion actually feel like in the body? What thoughts are actually arising? The Buddha gave incredibly detailed instructions for mindfulness practice in a teaching called the Satipatthana Sutta, or the Four Foundations of Mindfulness. These four foundations are mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feelings, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of mental phenomena. Let's explore each. Mindfulness of body. The first foundation is bringing awareness to the physical body. This might seem simple, but most of us spend most of our time completely disconnected from our bodies. We're in our heads, thinking about the past or future, while our bodies are here, now, largely ignored. The Buddha taught several body-based practices. The most fundamental is mindfulness of breathing. You simply pay attention to the breath, the sensation of air moving in and out of your nostrils, the rise and fall of your chest or belly, the feeling of your whole body breathing. The breath is always happening in the present moment, so following it anchors you here, now. But here's what actually happens when you try to watch your breath. You get distracted. You start thinking about what you need to do later, replaying a conversation from earlier, planning, worrying, fantasizing. And then, at some point, you remember, oh, I was supposed to be watching my breath. That moment of remembering is mindfulness. You gently bring your attention back to the breath, without judgment, and you do this over and over, thousands of times. This is the practice, not perfect concentration, but the repeated act of noticing you've wandered and coming back. Each time you notice and return, you're strengthening awareness. You're creating a tiny gap between stimulus and reaction. And over time, this gap becomes your freedom. The Buddha taught mindfulness of body postures, knowing when you're sitting, standing, walking, lying down. And mindfulness of activities, knowing when you're reaching, grasping, eating, speaking. The instruction is simply to know what you're doing while you're doing it, to be awake in your own life rather than on autopilot. Try this right now. Notice your body. How are you sitting or standing? What sensations are present? Don't try to change anything. Just know what's here. This is mindfulness of body. Simple, but revolutionary.
Mindfulness of feelings. The second foundation is mindfulness of Vedana, the feeling tone of experience. Every moment has a basic quality of pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. You taste something, and there's an immediate sense of like or dislike before you even think about it. You hear a sound, and there's a subtle pulling toward or pushing away. This matters because our reactions to feeling tones drive our behavior. We're constantly chasing pleasant feelings and running from unpleasant ones. This is the root of craving and aversion, which the Buddha identified as the cause of suffering. But we're usually not conscious of this process. It's happening automatically, beneath awareness. Mindfulness of feelings means noticing the feeling tone and not automatically reacting to it. When something pleasant arises, you notice pleasant feeling is present, and you don't immediately grasp at it or try to make it last. When something unpleasant arises, you notice unpleasant feeling is present, and you don't immediately push it away or react against it. When something neutral arises, you notice that too, without spacing out or getting bored. This creates enormous freedom. Most of our suffering comes from our reactions to feelings, not from the feelings themselves. Physical pain is unpleasant, but the suffering comes from the resistance. This shouldn't be happening. When will it end? I can't stand this. With mindfulness, you can feel the pain without adding the layer of mental suffering. The pain is still there, but you're not at war with it.
Same with pleasant feelings. Joy arises, and immediately we're trying to hold on to it, to make it last, and then we suffer when it fades. But if you can simply enjoy pleasant feelings while they're present, without grasping, there's no suffering when they pass. They're like birds flying through the sky of awareness. Beautiful, temporary, and that's okay. Mindfulness of mind. The third foundation is mindfulness of the mind itself, the overall state or mood of consciousness. Is the mind peaceful or agitated, concentrated or scattered, spacious or constricted, awake or drowsy? Usually we're identified with our mind states. If the mind is angry, we think we are angry. If the mind is sad, we think we are sad. But with mindfulness, you develop the ability to observe mind states without being completely absorbed in them. There's anger, but you're not identical with anger. There's sadness, but you're not identical with sadness. This creates space. The Buddha listed many mind states to be mindful of: a mind with desire or without desire, with aversion or without aversion, with delusion or without delusion, contracted or scattered, developed or not developed, concentrated or not concentrated, freed or not freed. The instruction is simple. Know the state that's present. Don't judge it. Don't try to force it to be different. Just know it. This is incredibly powerful because it reveals that mind states are like weather. They come and go. They're not who you are. You can be aware of depression without being depressed awareness. You can be aware of anxiety without being anxious awareness. The awareness itself is clear and spacious, regardless of what's passing through it. There's a Tibetan Buddhist analogy. Thoughts and emotions are like clouds passing through the sky. The clouds can be dark and stormy or light and pleasant, but they don't damage the sky. The sky remains vast and clear regardless of what's passing through it. Mindfulness helps you identify with the sky of awareness rather than the clouds of content. Mindfulness of mental phenomena. The fourth foundation is mindfulness of dhammas, mental phenomena or teachings. This is about recognizing specific patterns in your experience and understanding their nature. The Buddha gave specific frameworks to investigate, including the 5 hindrances, the 7 factors of enlightenment, and the 4 noble truths themselves. For example, the 5 hindrances are common obstacles to clarity and peace. 1. Sensory desire, craving for pleasant experiences. 2. Aversion, resistance to unpleasant experiences. 3. Sloth and torpor, sluggishness, drowsiness. 4. Restlessness and worry, agitation, anxiety. 5. Doubt, uncertainty, skepticism. Mindfulness of mental phenomena means recognizing when these are present. Sensory desire has arisen. This is what it feels like. Not suppressing it, not indulging it, just knowing it. And crucially, knowing when it's absent. Sensory desire is not present right now. This helps you see these states as temporary and conditioned, not as fundamental parts of who you are. The 7 factors of enlightenment are qualities to cultivate. 1. Mindfulness, remembering to be present. 2. Investigation, exploring experience with curiosity. 3. Energy, bringing vitality to practice. 4. Joy, appreciating what's good. 5. Tranquility, allowing calmness to settle. 6. Concentration, developing focus. And 7. Equanimity, maintaining balance regardless of circumstances. As you practice, you become familiar with these qualities. You learn to recognize when they're present and how to incline toward them without forcing. This is the art of practice, not aggressive self-improvement, but gentle cultivation, like tending a garden.
The transformative power of mindfulness. Why does simply paying attention change anything? Because most of our suffering happens unconsciously. We're on autopilot, reacting from habit, caught in the same patterns we've repeated for years. Mindfulness brings these patterns into consciousness where they can be seen, understood, and released. When you're mindful of an emotion, it changes, not because you're trying to change it, but because conscious awareness itself transforms experience. An emotion that you're fully present with tends to move through you more quickly. An emotion that you resist or avoid tends to stick around, growing stronger. There's a saying in Buddhism, what you resist persists. When you fight with your experience, you're trapped in it. When you're present with it, it has space to be what it is and then pass. Mindfulness is the art of making space for reality. This doesn't mean you passively accept harmful situations. It means you respond rather than react. You can be mindful of your anger and still set boundaries. You can be mindful of your fear and still take courageous action. In fact, mindfulness makes you more effective because you're acting from clarity rather than unconscious reactivity. The Buddha gave a beautiful simile. An untrained person is struck by an arrow and then struck by a second arrow, while a trained person is only struck by one arrow. The first arrow is the inevitable pain of life, loss, disappointment, physical pain, aging. The second arrow is the suffering we create through our reactions, the stories, the resistance, the identification. Mindfulness helps you avoid the second arrow. You can't control whether the first arrow hits, but you can control whether you shoot yourself with the second one. Formal practice and daily life. Mindfulness has two dimensions, formal practice and daily life integration. Formal practice is sitting meditation, where you dedicate time specifically to training attention. You sit still, watch your breath, notice when you've wandered, and come back. You do this for minutes or hours, depending on your commitment. This is like going to the gym. You're building the muscle of awareness in a controlled environment. But the real power comes from integrating mindfulness into daily life. You can be mindful while eating, really tasting your food rather than mindlessly shoveling it in. You can be mindful while walking, feeling each step, seeing what you're seeing. You can be mindful in conversation, actually listening rather than planning what you'll say next. You can be mindful of your emotional reactions, noticing the heat of anger or the contraction of fear as it arises in your body. The instruction is simple. Whatever you're doing, know that you're doing it. Be awake in your own life. This sounds easy, but it's actually the work of a lifetime. We're deeply conditioned to be elsewhere, to be distracted, to be half present. Mindfulness is the practice of coming back again and again to this moment, to this breath, to this life that's actually happening. When life doesn't go your way, mindfulness becomes your refuge, not because it makes everything better, but because it helps you meet difficulty with awareness rather than unconscious reactivity. You can be mindful of disappointment without drowning in it. You can be mindful of fear without being paralyzed by it. You can be mindful of grief without being destroyed by it. The pain is real, but mindfulness helps you hold it with compassion and wisdom rather than fighting it. This is the practice the Buddha offered. Pay attention. That's it. But don't underestimate how radical this is. To be fully present in your own life, to meet reality as it is rather than as you wish it to be, this is the foundation of all wisdom and peace. Part 6. Equanimity, the deepest peace. If mindfulness is the practice, equanimity is the fruit. In Pali, it's called upekkha, and it's one of the most beautiful and misunderstood concepts in Buddhism. Equanimity isn't indifference, it's not coldness or detachment. It's a profound, stable balance of mind that can meet any experience, pleasant or painful, with grace.
Equanimity is the peace the Buddha was pointing to when he said nirvana is available in this life. It's what allows you to be fully present with life's chaos without being destroyed by it. It's what makes it possible to love deeply without clinging desperately. It's what gives you the strength to face difficulty without collapsing or hardening. What equanimity is not. Let's start by clearing up misconceptions. Equanimity is not apathy. An apathetic person doesn't care about anything. An equanimous person cares deeply, but isn't thrown off balance by circumstances. It's the difference between a rock and a tree in a storm. The rock doesn't bend because it doesn't respond. The tree bends with the wind, but doesn't break. Equanimity is like the tree, responsive but not reactive, engaged but not swept away. Equanimity is not suppression. You're not pretending everything is fine when it's not. You're not pushing down difficult emotions. You're allowing everything to be as it is while maintaining your center. It's a paradox. You're fully feeling everything and you're not overwhelmed by it. Equanimity is not cold neutrality. You still have preferences. You still work to make things better, but you're not rigidly attached to outcomes. You do your best and release the results. This is actually more effective than desperate attachment because you're not clouded by anxiety and grasping.
The Buddhist teaching on equanimity. The Buddha taught equanimity in many contexts, but one of the most beautiful is the teaching on the 8 vicissitudes, or 8 worldly winds. These are 4 pairs of experiences that everyone faces. 1. Gain and loss. 2. Fame and disrepute. 3. Praise and blame. And 4. Pleasure and pain. The Buddha said that for ordinary people, these 8 winds blow them around like a feather in the wind. You get praised and you're elated. You get blamed and you're devastated. You experience pleasure and you're grasping. You experience pain and you're aversive. Your peace depends entirely on which way the wind is blowing.
But for someone with equanimity, these winds still blow, but they don't knock you over. You're like a mountain. The weather changes around you, but your fundamental stability remains. You can enjoy praise without getting inflated by it. You can receive criticism without being crushed by it. You can experience pleasure without desperately clinging to it. You can face pain without being destroyed by it. This is what it means to find peace in chaos. Not that chaos stops, but that you develop an inner stability that isn't shaken by external circumstances. The near and far enemies. Buddhist psychology talks about near enemies and far enemies of qualities like equanimity. The far enemy is the obvious opposite, in this case, anxiety or reactivity. But the near enemy is more subtle. It's something that looks like the quality, but isn't. The near enemy of equanimity is indifference. Indifference looks like equanimity on the surface. Both involve not being swept away by circumstances, but indifference comes from disconnection, while equanimity comes from deep engagement. An indifferent person has checked out. An equanimous person is fully present but balanced. This distinction is crucial. Equanimity doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care without attachment. You love without clinging. You work for change without being destroyed if it doesn't happen. You give your all while holding outcomes lightly. Cultivating equanimity. How do you develop equanimity? The Buddha taught several approaches. First, through mindfulness. As you become more aware of your reactions, you create space between stimulus and response. You see that thoughts and emotions arise and pass. You don't have to identify with them or be controlled by them. Second, through understanding impermanence and non-self. When you truly see that everything changes and there's no solid self to defend, you naturally become more equanimous. What is there to get upset about? What is there to protect? Third, through compassion meditation. The traditional equanimity phrases in Buddhist practice are, all beings are the owners of their actions, heirs of their actions, born of their actions, related through their actions, and live dependent on their actions. Whatever they do, for good or for ill, to that will they fall heir. This sounds fatalistic, but it's actually profoundly respectful. It recognizes that you can't control other people's lives or save them from all suffering. You can offer support, love, and help, but ultimately everyone has to walk their own path. This releases you from the exhausting burden of trying to control outcomes for yourself and others. Fourth, through acceptance. Not passive resignation, but active acceptance. Acceptance means acknowledging reality as it is before trying to change it. It means meeting life where it is, not where you wish it were. From this grounded place, you can respond wisely rather than react blindly. Equanimity in action. What does equanimity look like in real life? Imagine your business fails. Without equanimity, you might spiral into depression, thinking you're a failure, that your life is over. With equanimity, you feel the disappointment fully. It's real and valid, but you don't identify with it. You recognize this is one event, not your whole identity. You grieve what's lost and begin looking for what's next. The pain is there, but it doesn't destroy you. Or imagine someone you love is dying. Without equanimity, you might be so consumed by fear and grief that you can't be present with them. With equanimity, you feel the grief deeply. Love and loss are inseparable, but you can also be fully present, offering comfort, saying goodbye, honoring the time you have left. You're not denying death or pretending it doesn't hurt. You're meeting it with an open heart. Equanimity doesn't make difficult things easy. It gives you the capacity to meet them with dignity, wisdom, and grace. It's the difference between suffering that breaks you and suffering that deepens you. The Vietnamese monk Thich Nhat Hanh tells a story about a glass of water. If someone asks you, is this glass empty or full? You might say it's half full or half empty. But actually, the glass is always completely full, half with water and half with air. When life seems empty, equanimity helps you see it's also full. When life seems overwhelmingly full, equanimity helps you see the spaciousness within fullness. Equanimity is the quality that lets you say, this is how it is right now, without collapsing or resisting. It's the peace that comes from dancing with reality rather than fighting it. It's the wisdom that knows you can't control life, but you can choose how you meet it.
Part 7. Compassion. Buddhism is often misunderstood as cold or detached. People hear about non-attachment and equanimity and think it means not caring. But actually, compassion is at the very heart of Buddhist practice. The Buddha's entire life after enlightenment was an expression of compassion. He could have enjoyed his peace alone, but he spent 45 years teaching others how to find freedom from suffering. In Buddhism, wisdom and compassion are inseparable. Wisdom without compassion is cold. Compassion without wisdom is ineffective. Together, they form the two wings of awakening. What is compassion? The Pali word for compassion is karuna, which literally means the quivering of the heart in response to suffering. It's not pity, which creates separation between yourself and the other. Poor them, I'm glad I'm not in that situation. It's empathic distress, which is when you're so overwhelmed by others' suffering that you shut down. True compassion is the ability to be present with suffering, yours and others, with the wish to alleviate it. The Buddha's entire life after enlightenment was an expression of compassion. He could have enjoyed his peace alone, but he spent 45 years teaching others how to find freedom from suffering.
The Buddha taught 4 qualities called the Brahma Viharas, or divine abodes: loving kindness, metta; compassion, karuna; sympathetic joy, mudita; and equanimity, upekkha. These are considered the highest states of mind, the qualities of an awakened heart. Loving kindness is the wish for all beings to be happy. Compassion is the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. Sympathetic joy is the ability to rejoice in others' happiness and success. Equanimity is the ability to remain balanced in the face of life's ups and downs. These 4 work together. They balance and support each other. The practice of compassion. Traditional compassion meditation, or karuna meditation, follows a structured approach. You start by bringing to mind someone who's suffering. First, you might choose someone you care about who's going through a difficult time. You visualize them, sense their pain, and silently offer phrases like, "May you be free from suffering. May you be free from pain. May you find peace and ease." You're not trying to fix their situation or take away their pain through sheer force of will. You're opening your heart to their experience and offering goodwill. This practice softens the heart and breaks down the walls we build to protect ourselves from the world's pain. After practicing with someone you care about, you gradually expand the circle of compassion. You practice with someone neutral, someone you neither like nor dislike, perhaps a stranger you see regularly. Then you practice with someone difficult, someone who's hurt you or whom you dislike. This is challenging, but it's also liberating. When you can feel compassion for someone who's harmed you, you're no longer imprisoned by resentment. Finally, you expand compassion to all beings everywhere. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings find peace. This universal compassion recognizes that everyone, absolutely everyone, wants to be happy and free from pain. Everyone is doing their best with the resources and understanding they have. Everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. Self-compassion. Western practitioners struggle with self-compassion. We're taught to be hard on ourselves, that self-criticism drives improvement. But research and experience show the opposite. Self-compassion actually supports growth more than self-judgment. The Buddha taught that loving kindness should start with yourself. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I be at peace. You can't give to others from an empty cup. You can't offer genuine compassion if you're at war with yourself. Self-compassion doesn't mean self-indulgence or making excuses. It means treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer a good friend. When you fail, instead of harsh judgment, you acknowledge, "This is painful. I'm suffering right now. This is part of being human." You recognize your common humanity. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone suffers. Everyone is imperfect. Kristen Neff, a researcher who studies self-compassion, identifies 3 components: self-kindness, being warm toward yourself rather than harsh; common humanity, recognizing suffering is part of the human experience, not something wrong with you specifically; and mindfulness, being present with your pain rather than over-identifying with it or suppressing it. When life doesn't go your way, self-compassion is crucial. First, for yourself, meeting your own pain with kindness rather than judgment. Second, for others who are also struggling with life not going their way, which is everyone. And third, for the situation itself. Can you hold the whole mess with a compassionate heart, knowing that suffering is part of life, and that peace comes not from eliminating all difficulty, but from meeting it with wisdom and love? Compassion doesn't mean being a doormat. A common misconception is compassion means tolerating harmful behavior or letting people walk all over you. But compassion and boundaries are not opposed. In fact, healthy boundaries are an expression of compassion, both for yourself and for others. The Buddha taught that compassion should be guided by wisdom. Sometimes the compassionate response is to set a firm boundary. Sometimes it's to say no. Sometimes it's to let someone experience the consequences of their actions, because that's what they need to learn and grow. There's a difference between idiot compassion, a term from Tibetan Buddhism, and wise compassion. Idiot compassion is helping someone in a way that actually enables harmful behavior or prevents growth. Wise compassion sees the bigger picture and acts in service of true well-being, even if that means being uncomfortable or unpopular in the moment. For example, if someone you love is struggling with addiction, idiot compassion might be giving them money whenever they ask because you can't bear to see them suffer. Wise compassion might be setting a boundary. I love you, and I won't give you money that will be used to harm yourself. I'll support your recovery in these specific ways. This is harder, more painful in the short term, but more genuinely compassionate. Compassion fatigue and balance. People in helping professions, healthcare workers, therapists, social workers, teachers, often experience compassion fatigue. They care deeply, they're exposed to suffering constantly, and they burn out. This isn't because compassion is draining, it's because they're experiencing empathic distress rather than true equanimous compassion. This is where the four Brahma Viharas work together. Compassion without equanimity becomes overwhelming. You take on everyone's suffering as if it were your own, and you drown. But compassion with equanimity recognizes that you can care without being destroyed by what you care about. You can be present with suffering without being consumed by it. Equanimity provides the stability. Compassion provides the warmth. Together, they create sustainable engagement with a world that contains tremendous suffering. You can show up fully, care deeply, work tirelessly for change, and still maintain your center. Thich Nhat Hanh teaches about being peace rather than just working for peace. If you're full of anger and stress while working to reduce suffering, you're adding more suffering to the world even as you're trying to help. But if you cultivate inner peace while working for change, you become part of the solution. Your very presence becomes healing. Compassion in daily life. Formal compassion meditation is valuable, but the real practice is bringing compassion into daily life. It's pausing when someone cuts you off in traffic and thinking, maybe they're rushing to the hospital, maybe they're having the worst day of their life. It's noticing when you're being hard on yourself and offering kind words instead. It's listening fully when someone is sharing their pain rather than immediately trying to fix it or give advice. It's extending compassion to people you'll never meet. The person who made your clothes might be working in difficult conditions. Can you pause and wish them well? The people affected by news events you scroll past, can you pause and feel their humanity? This practice gradually softens the heart and breaks down the artificial separation between us and them. The Dalai Lama often says, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Compassion isn't a burden, it's a path to joy. When you genuinely care about others' well-being, your own concerns naturally become smaller. You stop taking everything so personally. You find meaning in connection and service rather than endless self-concern. Buddhism teaches that we're all interconnected. Your well-being and my well-being aren't separate. When I act with compassion toward you, I'm actually benefiting myself, not in a selfish way, but because harming you harms the whole, including me. Helping you helps the whole, including me. We rise or fall together. When life doesn't go...
Part 8. Letting Go. One of the most misunderstood teachings in Buddhism is about letting go, or non-attachment. People hear non-attachment and think it means not caring, not loving, not engaging with life. But that's not what the Buddha taught. He taught something far more nuanced and ultimately more liberating. The Pali word is upadana, which means clinging or grasping. The Buddha didn't say, don't have things, don't love people,
Don't have preferences. He said, don't cling. There's a huge difference between having and clinging, between loving and grasping, between caring and being attached to outcomes. The difference between preference and attachment. Having a preference is natural and healthy. You prefer comfort to pain. You prefer success to failure. You prefer your loved ones to be safe and happy. This is part of being human, and the Buddha never asked you to eliminate preferences. Attachment is different. Attachment is when you believe your happiness depends on getting what you prefer. It's when you're convinced that you can't be okay unless things go a certain way. It's the desperation, the rigid clinging, the inability to accept reality when it doesn't match your preference. For example, preferring your child to be safe is natural love. Being so terrified of something happening to them that you can't let them take any risks, that you're constantly anxious, that you're living in fear, that's attachment. The preference is healthy. The attachment creates suffering. Or consider a relationship. Loving someone deeply, enjoying their presence, wanting to be with them, that's beautiful. But if you're so attached that you're constantly anxious about them leaving, if you're trying to control them to ensure they don't leave, if you lose yourself in the relationship and can't imagine life without them, that's attachment. And ironically, attachment often pushes away what we're trying to hold on to. What does letting go actually mean? Letting go doesn't mean throwing things away or not caring. It means holding lightly instead of grasping desperately. It means being fully present with what is while it's here and being willing to release it when it changes or leaves. Think of holding a bird. If you grasp it tightly, you'll crush it or it will struggle to escape. If you open your hand completely, it will fly away. But if you hold it gently, with an open palm, it might stay, and if it chooses to fly away, you've had the gift of its presence without the suffering of desperate clinging. That's letting go. You can love someone completely, be fully committed to them, care deeply about their well-being, and simultaneously hold the truth that they're not yours, that they will change, that the relationship might end through change or death. This sounds painful, and in some ways it is, but it's also the path to love without suffering. The Buddha wasn't teaching detachment in the sense of disconnection. He was teaching non-attachment in the sense of loving fully while holding lightly, being all in while knowing nothing is permanent, giving your best while releasing outcomes. The freedom of letting go. Why is letting go so liberating? Because grasping is exhausting. When you're desperately holding on to something, you can't relax. You can't enjoy what you have because you're too busy worrying about losing it. You can't be present because you're constantly defending and protecting. You can't adapt to change because you're not rigidly attached to things staying the same. Your hands are open to receive life as it comes. There's a famous Zen story about a monk who was being chased by a tiger. He ran to the edge of a cliff, grabbed a vine, and began lowering himself down. Above him, the tiger waited. Below him, another tiger waited. And then he noticed two mice, one white and one black, gnawing at the vine. Looking around, he saw a wild strawberry growing from the cliff face. He reached out, picked it, and ate it. How sweet it tastes. This story captures the essence of letting go. The monk is in an impossible situation. Death is certain. But in that moment, he can still appreciate the sweetness of a strawberry. He's not in denial about the danger. He's just not spending his last moments in useless panic. He's fully present with what is, even as he lets go of what cannot be held. Practical approaches to letting go. How do you actually practice letting go? It's not something you do once. It's something you practice continuously, in small ways and large. First, practice with small things. Notice when you're holding tension in your body and consciously release it. Notice when you're gripping the steering wheel too tightly and soften your hands. These physical practices train the mind in letting go. Second, practice with thoughts and emotions. Notice when a thought arises, and instead of grabbing onto it or pushing it away, just watch it pass like a cloud in the sky. Notice when an emotion arises, and instead of identifying with it or suppressing it, just feel it in the body and let it move through you. Thoughts and emotions are like visitors. You can acknowledge them, allow them to pass through without believing you have to act on every one or that they define you. Third, practice with plans and expectations. Make plans, but hold them lightly. Expect things, but be willing to be surprised. When reality differs from your expectation, notice the gap and practice acceptance. Oh, this isn't what I expected. This is what's actually happening. This simple acknowledgement short-circuits the suffering of resistance. Fourth, practice with relationships. Love people fully while remembering they're not yours to possess. Appreciate them while they're here. Show up completely, and simultaneously hold the truth that everyone will leave eventually, through change or death. This sounds painful, and in some ways it is, but it's also the path to love without suffering. Fifth, practice with your sense of self. Notice how you're constantly trying to be somebody, to maintain a certain image, to prove your worth. What if you could let go of that exhausting project? What if you could just be, without constantly becoming? This is the deepest letting go, releasing the illusion of a fixed self that needs defending.
The paradox of effort and letting go. Here's a puzzle. Buddhism teaches both the importance of effort, right effort is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, and the importance of letting go. How do you work towards something while simultaneously letting go of outcomes? The answer is in understanding the difference between skillful effort and grasping. Skillful effort is doing what you can with what you have, fully engaging with life, taking wise action. Grasping is being attached to specific results, demanding that reality conform to your will, suffering when things don't go your way. You can work incredibly hard toward a goal while simultaneously accepting that you can't control outcomes. You can care deeply about success while being okay with failure. You can do your absolute best while releasing the results to the universe. This is what Krishna teaches Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, a Hindu text, but the principle applies. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the fruits of your actions. Do the work, let go of the outcome. In Buddhism, this is captured in the idea of wise effort, effort that's sustainable, balanced, not driven by craving or aversion. You're not striving from a sense of deficiency, trying to prove yourself or escape yourself. You're engaging from a place of wholeness, contributing your gifts, doing what's yours to do, and letting go of what's not in your control. When letting go is hard. Let's be honest, letting go is often incredibly difficult. When you've lost someone you love, someone might tell you to let go, and it feels like they're asking you to stop loving them, to dishonor them. But that's not what letting go means. Letting go of someone who's died doesn't mean forgetting them or pretending they didn't matter. It means accepting the reality that they're gone while carrying their love forward. It means loosening your grip on the past so you can be present in your actual life. It means allowing grief to move through you rather than cementing it into your identity. When a dream dies, a career, a relationship, a version of your future, letting go doesn't mean it didn't matter or that you failed. It means acknowledging what was, grieving what's lost, and opening to what might come next. It means not spending the rest of your life fighting with reality about what should have been.
The Buddha gave a teaching about the two arrows that's relevant here. The first arrow is the pain of loss, unavoidable, part of life. The second arrow is the suffering we add by resisting the loss, by thinking it shouldn't have happened, by refusing to accept reality. Letting go is about avoiding the second arrow. The first arrow still hurts, that's love, but you don't have to shoot yourself with the second arrow. The ultimate letting go. In Buddhist practice, there's a teaching about the 5 remembrances that practitioners recite regularly. 1. I am of the nature to age. I have not gone beyond aging. 2. I am of the nature to sicken. I have not gone beyond sickness. 3. I am of the nature to die. I have not gone beyond dying. 4. All that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. 5. I am the owner of my actions, heir to my actions, born of my actions, related through my actions, and live dependent on my actions. Whatever I do, for good or ill, to that will I fall heir. This sounds morbid, but it's actually liberating. It's a daily practice of letting go of the illusion of control and permanence. You can't stop aging, sickness, death, or change. You can't keep everyone you love forever. But you can live wisely, act ethically, and meet reality with an open heart. The ultimate letting go is death, and Buddhism teaches us to prepare for it, not by denying it, but becoming intimate with it. Monks, in some traditions, practice death meditations, contemplating corpses at various stages of decay. This isn't morbid fascination. It's a way of confronting the truth we usually avoid. This body will die. This life will end. Everything you're holding will be released. And paradoxically, when you truly accept death, you become more alive. When you know time is limited, you stop wasting it on petty concerns. When you know everyone will die, you treat people with more love and less judgment. When you know you'll lose everything, you appreciate what you have right now. As Steve Jobs famously said after his cancer diagnosis, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." Letting go is the practice of living with open hands, an open heart, an open mind. It's the practice of loving fully while holding lightly, of engaging completely while releasing outcomes, of being all in while knowing nothing is guaranteed. And it's in this paradoxical space, fully committed and fully surrendered, that peace is found.
Part 9. Applying the teachings. We've covered a lot of Buddhist philosophy and practice, but how do you actually apply these teachings when life doesn't go your way? How do you find peace in real chaos, not just in theory? Let's get practical. When you face disappointment, you didn't get the job, the relationship ended, the project failed, you're disappointed, maybe devastated. Here's how Buddhist teachings can help. First, acknowledge the 4 noble truths. You're suffering, first truth. You're suffering because you're craving for reality to be different than it is, second truth. Peace is possible even though the situation hasn't changed, third truth. And there's a path to that peace, fourth truth. Second, practice mindfulness of feelings. Notice the disappointment as a feeling in your body. Where do you feel it? Is it a heaviness in your chest, a tightness in your throat, a sinking in your stomach? Don't judge the feeling or try to change it. Just notice it with curiosity and kindness. Third, recognize impermanence. This disappointment feels permanent right now, but it won't last forever. Nothing does. Your feelings will shift. New opportunities will arise. Life will move forward. This moment of disappointment is just one moment in a long journey. Fourth, investigate your attachment. What were you hoping would happen? Why did you need it so badly? Often, we're not just disappointed about the specific outcome,
We're disappointed because we attached our worth, our identity, or our happiness to that outcome. Can you separate your essential worth from this one result? Fifth, practice self-compassion. Instead of beating yourself up, "I should have tried harder, I'm such a failure," speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend. This is really painful. Anyone would feel disappointed. You did your best with what you knew at the time. Sixth, look for the lesson. Not in a toxic positivity way where you pretend everything is fine, but in a genuine curiosity about what you can learn. What does this disappointment reveal about your assumptions, your approach, your needs? Sometimes the path forward only becomes clear when a door closes. Finally, practice letting go. You can't undo what happened. You can acknowledge it, learn from it, grieve it, and then release your grip on it. Not immediately. Grief and disappointment need time, but gradually, consciously, you can loosen your attachment to what didn't work out and open yourself to what might come next. When you face uncertainty, the diagnosis is unclear. Your job might be eliminated. You don't know if the relationship will survive. Uncertainty is one of the most challenging experiences because we're wired to want certainty. We want to know what's going to happen so we can prepare for it, but life rarely offers that kind of certainty. Buddhist teachings are specifically designed for uncertainty because they start from the premise that everything is uncertain. Nothing is stable. Nothing is guaranteed. Change is the only constant. First, recognize that your discomfort with uncertainty is craving for control. You want to know the future so you can control it, or at least prepare for it. But the Buddha taught that this craving for control is a major source of suffering. The future is unknowable. Control is an illusion. Second, bring yourself back to the present moment. Uncertainty is about the future, but right now, in this moment, what's actually happening? Are you safe right now? Are you breathing? Do you have what you need in this moment? Anxiety pulls you into imagined futures. Mindfulness brings you back to the actual present, which is usually more manageable than the catastrophic scenarios your mind creates. Third, practice the don't know mind. This is a Zen concept. Instead of needing to know, can you be comfortable with not knowing? Can you hold the question without desperately grasping for an answer? There's a freedom in, "I don't know what will happen, and that's okay." It releases you from the exhausting task of trying to predict and control the future. Fourth, recognize that you've survived uncertainty before. Your whole life has been uncertain. You didn't know most of what would happen, and yet here you are. You have a track record of handling whatever comes. Trust that you'll handle this too, whatever it turns out to be. Fifth, use uncertainty as a meditation on impermanence. The very fact that you don't know what will happen is proof that everything is changing, unfolding, evolving. Can you ride this wave of change rather than fighting it? Can you be curious about what emerges rather than terrified of what might happen? Sixth, practice equanimity. Whatever happens, you'll meet it. Whether the news is good or bad, whether things work out or they don't, you have the capacity to be present with whatever arises. You can't control outcomes, but you can cultivate the inner stability to meet any outcome with grace. When you face loss, someone you love has died, a relationship has ended, you've lost your health, your career, your dream, your sense of who you are. Loss is the deepest form of life not going your way because it's irreversible. You can't get back what's gone. Buddhism doesn't minimize loss. The Buddha's teaching on suffering specifically includes loss as one of the fundamental forms of dukkha, and his entire path began with recognizing the inevitability of loss. Everything you love will be lost, either through change or death. But Buddhism also offers a path through loss that honors the reality of grief while preventing it from becoming a prison. First, allow yourself to grieve.
Buddhist practice is not about spiritual bypassing, where you use spiritual ideas to avoid feeling pain. Grief is love with nowhere to go. If you loved, you will grieve. The Buddha grieved when his disciples died. He didn't pretend it didn't hurt. He felt it fully and then moved forward. Second, recognize the two arrows. The first arrow is the pain of loss. This is unavoidable. The second arrow is the stories you tell about the loss. I'll never be happy again. I can't survive this. Life is meaningless without them. These stories amplify suffering. You can feel the pain without adding these layers of meaning that make it unbearable. Third, practice with impermanence. Whatever you lost was always going to be lost eventually. Everything that comes into being passes out of being. This doesn't make the loss hurt less, but it places it in context. You haven't been singled out for suffering. This is the nature of existence. Knowing this can help you feel less alone in your grief. Fifth, practice non-self. Who is it that's grieving? If you look closely, you'll find grief is a process, not a thing happening to a fixed self. There are waves of sadness, memories arising, sensations in the body, but no solid griever. This subtle investigation doesn't eliminate grief, but it prevents you from cementing grief into your identity. Fifth, let the loss crack you open rather than close you down. C.S. Lewis wrote about grief, "No one ever told me that grief felt so like fear." Grief can make you want to shut down, to protect yourself from ever feeling this way again. But Buddhism invites you to let grief soften you, to let it deepen your compassion for all beings who grieve, to let it remind you of the preciousness of what you have right now. Sixth, practice continuing bonds. In some Buddhist traditions, you maintain a relationship with the deceased through ritual, memory, and honoring their legacy. They're not gone in the sense that they never existed. They're gone in the sense that their form has changed. The love remains. The impact they had on you remains. They live on in how they shaped you.
Third, set boundaries without hatred. You can say, "What you did was wrong. I will not allow you to treat me this way. I'm removing myself from the situation," all while maintaining your equanimity. Boundaries aren't about punishing the other person. They're about protecting yourself and teaching others how you'll allow yourself to be treated. Fourth, investigate your own mind. How much of your suffering is the actual betrayal, and how much is the story you're telling about it? This proves I'm unlovable. I can never trust anyone again. Everyone is out to get me. These stories create additional suffering beyond the original harm. Can you feel the hurt without making it mean something about your worth or about all people? Fifth, consider the teaching on karma. In Buddhism, karma isn't cosmic punishment, it's the law of cause and effect. Actions have consequences. The person who harmed you will experience the consequences of their actions in some way, not because the universe is punishing them, but because harmful actions come from a confused, suffering mind and perpetuate that suffering. You don't need to seek revenge. Karma takes care of itself. Your job is to respond from your highest self, not to lower yourself to their level. As Michelle Obama said, "When they go low, we go high." This isn't about being a doormat, it's about maintaining your integrity regardless of others' behavior. Sixth, practice forgiveness as a release. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning the behavior or reconciling with the person. It means releasing yourself from the prison of resentment. Resentment keeps you tied to the person who harmed you. Every time you think about them with hatred, you're giving them power over your peace. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. It's saying, I release myself from carrying this bitterness. What happened, happened. I can't change it, but I can choose to not let it poison the rest of my life. This often takes time. You can't force forgiveness, but you can incline toward it, little by little, as a gift to yourself. Finally, work for justice without attachment to revenge. If you've been treated unjustly, it's appropriate to seek justice, to report the behavior, to take legal action, to work for systemic change. Buddhism isn't about passivity, but do this work from a clear mind, not from hatred. Work for justice because it's right, not because you need revenge to feel okay. The outcome of your efforts isn't in your control, but your integrity is. When you face chronic difficulty, sometimes life doesn't just not go your way for a moment, it's an ongoing struggle. Chronic illness, chronic pain, an oppressive work situation you can't leave, a difficult family member you're caring for, economic hardship, discrimination, trauma effects that persist. These aren't temporary setbacks you can wait out, they're ongoing realities you have to live with. This is where Buddhist practice becomes essential, not as a philosophy, but as a survival tool. Because you need ways to find peace and meaning even when circumstances don't improve. First, shift from "when will this end?" to "how can I be present with this?" The waiting for things to get better is another form of suffering. It keeps you in the future, unable to find any peace now. What if it doesn't end? What if this is your life? Can you find ways to be okay even so? This sounds harsh, but it's actually compassionate. It releases you from the torture of constantly hoping for a different reality. You can still work toward change while simultaneously accepting what is. Second, practice radical acceptance. This is a concept from dialectical behavior therapy, but it's rooted in Buddhist teachings. Radical acceptance means accepting reality completely, without reservation, without bitterness, not because you like it or because it's fair, but because it is what it is. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up, it means starting from reality rather than from your wishes about reality. From this grounded place, you can actually respond more effectively. When you stop fighting with the fact of your situation, you have more energy to work with the situation skillfully. Third, find the moments of peace within difficulty. Even in chronic pain, there are moments when pain is less. Even in chronic stress, there are moments of ease. Even in ongoing hardship, there are moments of beauty, connection, kindness. Can you notice these moments? Can you appreciate them without needing them to last forever or mean that everything is fixed? Fourth, practice gratitude for what works. Your legs might be in pain, but your arms work. You might be poor, but you have food today. You might be dealing with trauma, but you have moments of safety. This isn't toxic positivity, it's balance. Acknowledging what's hard while also acknowledging what's okay. Fifth, cultivate meaning beyond circumstances. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that the prisoners who survived were not necessarily the physically strongest, but those who found meaning in their suffering. He discovered that humans can endure almost anything if they have a why. What gives your life meaning beyond your circumstances? Relationships, creativity, service, spirituality, growth? Can you connect to that meaning even while circumstances are difficult? Your circumstances might be terrible, but you can still choose how you meet them. You can still choose to be kind, to grow, to love. This is the ultimate freedom. Sixth, build a practice you can rely on. When life is chronically difficult, you need daily practices that create islands of peace in the chaos. Meditation, even 5 minutes a day. Mindful breathing when pain or stress intensifies. Compassion practices when you're overwhelmed. Reading teachings that remind you of larger truths. Connecting with a community of practitioners. These practices don't fix your circumstances, but they give you a refuge within your circumstances. They're like coming back to a still point in the center of a storm. Finally, remember that you're not alone. Everyone faces difficulty. Everyone suffers. Your specific circumstances might be unique, but the experience of struggling with life is universal. Can you feel your connection to all beings who've struggled before you and who struggle alongside you now? This doesn't diminish your specific pain, but it can reduce the isolation of suffering.
When you face your own mind, sometimes the chaos isn't external, it's internal. Your mind is the problem. You're plagued by anxiety, depression, obsessive thoughts, self-hatred, addiction, or any of the ways the mind can create its own suffering. This is actually where Buddhist practice is most directly helpful, because Buddhism is fundamentally about working with the mind. The Buddha said, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." First, recognize that you are not your thoughts. This is perhaps the most important insight for mental suffering. You think, "I am anxious," and you become identified with anxiety. But more accurately, there is anxiety present in this moment. Anxiety is a temporary visitor, not your essential nature. When you create space between awareness and the content of awareness, everything shifts. You can observe thoughts without believing them. You can feel emotions without being controlled by them. You can notice patterns without being enslaved by them. Second, practice mindfulness of mind states. When anxiety arises, notice, this is anxiety. This is what anxiety feels like. When depression arises, this is depression. Name it. Notice its qualities. Track how it changes from moment to moment. This simple act of observing creates distance. Third, don't believe everything you think. Your mind will tell you all sorts of things. Everyone hates you. You're going to fail. There's no point. You're worthless. The mind produces thoughts constantly, and most of them are just noise, not truth. Can you hear your thoughts without automatically believing them? Ask yourself, is this thought actually true? Is it helpful? Would I say this to a friend? Often the answer is no, no, and no. So why give the thought credibility just because it arose in your mind? Fourth, work with thoughts rather than against them. Trying to suppress thoughts usually makes them stronger. This is the white bear phenomenon. If I tell you, don't think about a white bear, what do you think about? The white bear. Instead of fighting thoughts, acknowledge them and let them pass. There's that anxious thought again. Interesting. It's just a thought. Treat thoughts like clouds in the sky. They come, they float across your awareness, they pass. You don't have to grab onto them or push them away. Just watch them move through. Fifth, develop self-compassion. Much mental suffering is amplified by self-judgment. You're anxious, and then you judge yourself for being anxious. I'm so weak. I should be able to handle this. What's wrong with me? Now you're suffering from anxiety and from self-judgment about anxiety, the second arrow. Can you meet your own mind with kindness? Of course you're anxious. This is hard. Anyone would struggle with this. You're doing your best. This doesn't fix the anxiety, but it dramatically reduces the suffering around it. Sixth, understand that mental states are impermanent. When you're depressed, it feels like you've always been depressed and always will be. But actually, depression fluctuates. Sometimes it's heavier, sometimes lighter. Sometimes it lifts completely for moments or hours. Nothing stays the same, including your mental states. This knowledge gives you hope during difficulty. This too shall pass, and prevents complacency during ease. Enjoy this while it's here. Seventh, seek help when needed. Buddhist practice is powerful, but it's not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you're struggling with clinical depression, anxiety disorders, trauma, or addiction, please see a therapist, psychiatrist, or other mental health professional. Buddhism can complement treatment, but it shouldn't replace it. The Buddha was pragmatic. He taught that if you're shot with an arrow, you should remove the arrow first, not sit around philosophizing about who shot it and why. Sometimes you need practical intervention before you can effectively engage with spiritual practice. Finally, remember that working with your mind is the work of a lifetime. You won't master it quickly. You'll have good days and terrible days. You'll make progress and regress. This is normal. Be patient with yourself. Every moment you bring awareness to your experience is a victory, even if the experience itself is difficult.
Balance in stillness and action. Some people think Buddhism is all about sitting still, being peaceful, withdrawing from activity. Others think it's all about mindful action in the world. The middle way is both, cultivating stillness through meditation and expressing that stillness through wise action. You need periods of formal practice, sitting meditation, retreats, dedicated time for inner work. This is where you develop the capacity for awareness, where you train the mind, where you touch deep peace. But you can't stay on the meditation cushion forever. You have to live. And that's where the practice really happens. Can you be mindful while washing dishes? Can you be equanimous during a difficult conversation? Can you be compassionate when someone is rude to you? Can you maintain your center in the middle of chaos? The meditation cushion is practice. Life is the real test. The middle way is moving fluidly between formal practice and daily life, between stillness and action, between being and doing. Each supports the other. Meditation makes you more present in life. Life gives you material to work with in meditation. Balance in solitude and community. Some people think spirituality is a solitary journey. Others think you need a community and teacher to practice. The middle way is recognizing the value of both. You need solitude. You need time alone with your own mind, facing yourself, developing your own understanding. No one can do this work for you. No teacher can meditate for you. No community can realize the truth on your behalf. This is your journey. But you also need community. You need teachers who've walked the path before you. You need fellow practitioners who understand what you're experiencing. You need the support, accountability, and wisdom that come from practicing with others. Trying to do it all alone is unnecessarily difficult. The Buddha himself emphasized the Sangha, community, as one of the 3 jewels of Buddhism, along with the Buddha and the Dharma, teachings. Community isn't optional, it's essential. So balance solitude and community. Have your own practice and find your people. Join a meditation group, work with a teacher, connect with fellow seekers. Don't make spiritual practice another way to isolate yourself. The middle way as a way of life. Ultimately, the middle way isn't just about specific practices or decisions. It's a way of being in the world. It's a commitment to balance, nuance, and wisdom in all things. It's refusing extremes and embracing the messy middle where real life happens. When life doesn't go your way, the middle way reminds you, don't collapse into despair, but don't bypass into false positivity. Feel what you feel, accept what is, do what you can, let go of what you can't control. Keep your heart open, stay present, keep practicing. This isn't sexy or dramatic. It's not the extreme asceticism of ancient monks or the blissed-out peace of enlightenment stories. It's the quiet, steady, sustainable practice of showing up to your life with awareness and compassion again and again, day after day, in the middle of chaos and beauty and ordinariness. The middle way is where peace actually lives, not in some extreme state of perfection, but in the wise, balanced, conscious navigation of this messy, beautiful, difficult, precious human life. Part 10. The Middle Way. Throughout this exploration, we keep returning to a core Buddhist principle, the middle way. This was the Buddha's great insight after trying both indulgence and extreme asceticism. Neither extreme leads to liberation. The path to peace lies in the middle. Balance in practice. The middle way applies to practice itself. Some people become obsessed with meditation, spending hours on the cushion while neglecting work, relationships, and health. Others barely practice at all, reading about Buddhism but never actually engaging with it. The middle way is consistent, sustainable practice that fits into a well-balanced life. The Buddha used the analogy of a lute string. If the string is too loose, it won't make music. If it's too tight, it will break. It needs to be tuned just right, neither too lax nor too tight. Similarly, your practice should have effort but not strain, discipline but not rigidity, commitment but not obsession. This means being honest with yourself about what you can actually sustain. If you commit to meditating for an hour every day and you constantly fail, you'll just feel guilty and quit entirely. But if you commit to 10 minutes and succeed, you'll build confidence and naturally want to do more. Start where you are. Be realistic. Build gradually. Balance in response to difficulty. The middle way also applies to how you respond when life doesn't go your way. One extreme is to collapse, to be completely overwhelmed, to give up. The other extreme is to bypass, to pretend everything is fine, to force positivity. The middle way is acknowledging difficulty while maintaining your center. Yes, this is hard, and yes, I can handle it. Both are true. Yes, I'm hurting, and yes, I'm not destroyed by this hurt. Both are true. Yes, I wish things were different, and yes, I accept they are what they are. Both are true. This is the art of holding paradox. Life isn't either or, it's both and. You can feel pain and peace simultaneously. You can accept reality and work to change it. You can love someone and set boundaries. You can be committed and detached. You can be fully engaged and completely surrendered. The middle way is refusing to reduce complexity to simple binaries. Life is messy, contradictory, paradoxical. Buddhism teaches you to be comfortable with that complexity rather than forcing simplistic solutions. Balance in emotional expression. Some people express every emotion immediately and intensely. Others suppress everything, maintaining a stoic facade. The middle way is emotional honesty with wisdom. Feel your feelings fully. Don't suppress them or pretend they're not there, but don't indulge them either, wallowing in them or acting them out harmfully. Feel anger without attacking. Feel sadness without drowning. Feel joy without grasping. This is the dance of being human while remaining conscious. There's a traditional Buddhist practice called neither suppressing nor indulging. When a difficult emotion arises, you don't push it away, suppression, and you don't act it out or identify with it, indulgence. You feel it, investigate it, learn from it, and let it move through you. This is the middle way with emotions. Balance in engagement with the world. Some people interpret Buddhist teachings as an invitation to withdraw from the world, to become passive and disengaged. Others become activists who burn out trying to fix everything. The middle way is engaged Buddhism, being fully present in the world, working skillfully for change while maintaining inner peace. The Dalai Lama embodies this. He's deeply engaged with political issues, climate change, social justice, and global affairs. He works tirelessly, but he also maintains a daily meditation practice and radiates peace. He's found the balance between engagement and equanimity. You can care about the world and not be destroyed by it. You can work for change and accept things as they are. You can be urgent without being anxious. You can be committed without being attached to outcomes. This is the middle way. Balance in self-improvement. In the West, Buddhism often gets appropriated into the self-improvement industry. People treat it as another tool for optimization, for becoming a better version of themselves, for achieving peak performance. This misses the point. Buddhist practice isn't about self-improvement, it's about self-understanding. The goal isn't to become a superhuman who never feels pain or never struggles. The goal is to see through the illusion of a solid self that needs improving in the first place. Yes, you'll develop helpful qualities, more patience, more compassion, more clarity, but these aren't achievements to bolster your ego. They're natural expressions of seeing reality more clearly. When you see that everyone is suffering from the same fundamental confusion you are, compassion naturally arises. When you see the impermanent nature of all things, patience naturally arises. The middle way is practicing without grasping for results. You practice because it's the wise thing to do, not because you're desperately trying to fix yourself. You're already whole. Practice just helps you remember that.
The parable of the poison arrow. The Buddha often used this teaching when people came to him with metaphysical questions instead of practical ones. A man came to the Buddha and said, "I won't follow your teachings until you answer these questions. Is the universe eternal or not eternal? Is it finite or infinite? Is the soul the same as the body or different? What happens after death?" The Buddha replied with a parable. Suppose a man is struck by a poison arrow. His friends rush him to a doctor, but the man says, "Wait, before you remove this arrow, I need to know who shot it, what is his name, what family is he from, was he tall or short, what kind of bow did he use, what kind of wood is the arrow made from, what feathers are on the arrow." The Buddha continued, that man would die before he got answers to all those questions. Similarly, if someone says, "I won't practice until I understand the nature of the universe," that person will die before finding those answers. I teach what is useful for ending suffering, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. These questions you ask don't lead to peace or wisdom. They're not connected to liberation. This story is profound for when life doesn't go your way. Often we get stuck in the why questions. Why did this happen to me? Why is life unfair? Why do bad things happen to good people? These are natural questions, but obsessing over them is like refusing to remove the poison arrow until you understand every detail about it. The Buddha isn't saying these questions are wrong. He's saying that when you're suffering, the priority is to address the suffering, pull out the arrow, deal with the practical reality in front of you. The philosophical questions can wait, or they might resolve themselves once you've found peace. When your life is in chaos, you don't need to understand the cosmic reasons why. You need practical tools to find peace now. That's what Buddhism offers. The story of Angulimala. Angulimala was a serial killer. His name means garland of fingers because he wore a necklace made from the fingers of his victims. He had killed 999 people and was searching for his 10th victim to complete his garland. He was the most feared person in the land. The king's army couldn't catch him. Villages were abandoned out of terror. One day, Angulimala saw the Buddha walking alone on a road, perfect, his final victim. He began chasing the Buddha with his sword raised, intent on murder. But something strange happened. No matter how fast Angulimala ran, he couldn't catch up to the Buddha, who appeared to be walking normally. Finally, exhausted, Angulimala shouted, "Stop, monk." The Buddha replied calmly, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." Confused, Angulimala said, "What do you mean? You're walking and I'm standing still." The Buddha replied, "I have stopped harming living beings, but you continue to harm them. So I have stopped, but you have not." These words struck Angulimala like lightning. For the first time, he saw himself clearly, the horror of what he'd done, the suffering he'd caused. He fell to his knees, dropped his sword, and begged the Buddha to teach him. The Buddha accepted him as a student, and Angulimala became a monk. But his past didn't disappear.
When he went for alms in the village, people recognized him and attacked him with stones and sticks. He returned to the Buddha bleeding and bruised. The Buddha said, "Bear it patiently, Angulimala. You're experiencing in this life the results of actions that would otherwise have caused you to suffer in hell for many lifetimes." Eventually, through sincere practice and genuine transformation, Angulimala became enlightened. But even after enlightenment, he still bore the scars of his past, and people still feared him. This story teaches several things about dealing with chaos and difficulty. First, transformation is always possible. No matter what you've done, no matter how lost you are, you can wake up. You can change. Your past doesn't have to define your future. Second, transformation doesn't erase consequences. Angulimala awakened, but he still had to face the results of his actions. When life doesn't go your way because of your own past choices, you can't just spiritually bypass the consequences. You face them with awareness and equanimity. Third, you are not your past. Angulimala had been a serial killer, but that wasn't his essential nature. When he stopped, when he woke up, a different possibility emerged. Whatever you've done, whatever has happened to you, it's not the whole story. You're not frozen in your worst moments. The Tiger and the Strawberry. This is a Zen story. A man was walking through a field when he encountered a tiger. He ran, but the tiger chased him. He came to the edge of a cliff and with no other option, climbed down a vine. Looking up, he saw the tiger at the top. Looking down, he saw another tiger waiting at the bottom. Then he noticed two mice, one white, one black, gnawing at the vine. In that moment, he saw a wild strawberry growing from the cliff face. He reached out, picked it, and ate it. How sweet it tasted. This might be the most perfect Buddhist story about finding peace in chaos. The man is in an impossible situation, tigers above and below, the vine being eaten away, death certain. And yet in that moment, he can still appreciate the sweetness of a strawberry. The tigers represent birth and death, the inescapable boundaries of existence. The vine is your life. The white and black mice are day and night, eating away at your time. This is your situation. This is everyone's situation. Death is certain. Time is always running out. The question is, given this reality, how will you live? The story doesn't say the man found a clever way to escape the tigers. It doesn't say he transcended fear or reached some blissed-out state. He simply tasted the strawberry fully. In the midst of chaos and certainty of death, he was present with what was actually happening in that moment, the taste of a sweet berry. When life doesn't go your way, when you're trapped in an impossible situation, can you still taste the strawberry? Can you still find moments of beauty, connection, sweetness? Not as a distraction from reality, but as part of reality. The chaos and the sweetness coexist. Peace isn't found by escaping the chaos. It's found by being fully present within it.
The story of Patachara. Patachara was a wealthy young woman who fell in love with a servant. Her parents disapproved, so she ran away with him. They lived in poverty in a distant village. She became pregnant and wanted to give birth at her parents' house, but her husband refused to take her. As her labor began, he finally agreed, but on the journey, she went into labor in the middle of a forest during a storm. While her husband went to gather wood for shelter, he was bitten by a snake and died. She gave birth alone in the storm. The next day, with her newborn and toddler, she continued toward her parents' village. They came to a river swollen with rain. She couldn't carry both children across at once, so she left the toddler on the bank and carried the baby across.
As she laid the baby on the far bank and turned back for her toddler, a hawk swooped down and carried off the baby. When the toddler saw her mother across the river, he tried to come to her and drowned in the current. She had lost both children within moments. Mad with grief, she continued to her village. There, she learned that during the storm, her parents' house had collapsed, killing both her parents and her brother. In a single day, she had lost her husband, both children, and her entire family. Patachara wandered, driven mad by grief, wearing rags, laughed at by people who didn't know her story. Eventually, she stumbled into a place where the Buddha was teaching. The sound of his voice somehow reached through her madness. The Buddha said to her gently, "Sister, regain your awareness." Something in those words penetrated. She suddenly became present, saw where she was, and felt the full weight of her losses. She fell at the Buddha's feet, weeping. He didn't tell her not to grieve. He didn't say everything happens for a reason. He simply taught her about impermanence and suffering. He said, "Throughout countless lifetimes, you have shed more tears for lost loved ones than there is water in the oceans." This helped her see that grief is the natural result of love in an impermanent world. She wasn't being punished. This was the nature of existence. Patachara became a nun and eventually an enlightened master, known for her wisdom in helping others deal with loss and grief. She had experienced the worst possible suffering, and she found peace not by denying it or transcending it, but by understanding it deeply. Her story teaches that no amount of suffering disqualifies you from peace. In fact, deep suffering often opens you to deep wisdom. The cracks in your life are where the light enters. When everything has been taken from you, you discover that peace doesn't depend on having anything. It's what remains when everything is gone. The empty boat. A Zen monk was crossing a river in a small boat when another boat came toward him through the fog. The boat hit his, nearly capsizing him. The monk was furious, ready to shout at the careless boater. But as the fog cleared, he saw the other boat was empty. It had broken loose from its mooring and drifted into him. In that moment, his anger vanished. He laughed at himself. When he thought there was someone to blame, he was furious. When he realized there was no one there, the anger disappeared instantly. The teaching: most of the time, people who bump into you in life are like empty boats. They're not deliberately trying to hurt you. They're acting from their own pain, confusion, and unconscious patterns. They're drifting, controlled by forces they don't understand. When someone cuts you off in traffic, they're an empty boat, stressed, distracted, unaware. When someone is rude to you, they're an empty boat, having a terrible day, carrying invisible burdens. When life doesn't go your way, often it's just empty boats bumping into you, impersonal forces, random events, unconscious patterns. This doesn't mean you don't set boundaries or protect yourself, but it means you don't take everything personally. You respond to the situation without the added suffering of resentment and blame. The collision still happened. The difficulty is still real, but you're not adding the second arrow of personal offense. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're teachings encoded in narrative, meant to be contemplated, internalized, lived. When you face difficulty, remember Kisa Gotami and know you're not alone. Remember the strawberry and taste what's sweet even in chaos. Remember Angulimala and know transformation is possible. Remember Patachara and know that suffering can become wisdom. Remember the empty boat and take things less personally.
Part 11. Stories from the Tradition. Buddhist teachings come alive through stories. For 25 centuries, these tales have been passed down,
each one containing seeds of wisdom about meeting life's difficulties with grace. Let me share some that directly address finding peace when life doesn't go your way. The story of Kisa Gotami. We mentioned this story earlier, but it deserves a deeper exploration. Kisa Gotami was a young mother whose infant son died suddenly. She was devastated, unable to accept his death. She carried his body through the village, begging everyone she met to give her medicine to bring him to life. People thought she had gone mad with grief. Finally, someone directed her to the Buddha. She fell at his feet and pleaded, "Please give me medicine to revive my son." The Buddha looked at her with great compassion and said, "I can help you, but first you must bring me a mustard seed from a household that has never known death." Kisa Gotami was overjoyed. A mustard seed was common. Every household had them. She went from door to door asking, "Can you give me a mustard seed? My family has never experienced death." At the first house, they offered her seeds immediately, but when she asked if anyone in their family had died, they said, "Of course, we lost my father last year." She moved to the next house. "My daughter died in childbirth." The next, "My brother drowned." The next, "My wife passed last month." House after house, she found the same truth. Death had visited every single home. Some had lost children, some had lost parents, some had lost spouses or siblings. Not one family had escaped death's touch. As the day progressed and her search continued fruitlessly, something shifted in Kisa Gotami. She began to see her grief in a new light. She returned to the Buddha without a mustard seed, but with understanding. She said, "I understand now. Death is universal. I am not alone in my loss. This is the way of all living things." The Buddha replied, "The life of mortals in this world is troubled and brief and combined with pain. There is not any means by which those who have been born can avoid dying. All living beings are of such a nature that they must die, whether they reach old age or not." Kisa Gotami cremated her son and became one of the Buddhist most devoted students. Eventually, she became an enlightened nun. Her grief didn't disappear, but it was transformed. She found peace not by escaping from the reality of death, but by understanding its universality and impermanence. This story teaches us that when we face loss, we often feel isolated, as if we've been singled out for suffering. But the truth is that loss is the most universal human experience. Everyone loses everyone. Everyone grieves. And there's a strange comfort in this recognition. You're not alone in your aloneness. You're connected to all beings through the shared experience of impermanence. Part 12. Building a sustainable practice. Understanding Buddhist teachings intellectually is one thing. Building a sustainable practice that actually supports you when life doesn't go your way is another. Let's talk about how to make these teachings real and lasting in your life. Starting where you are. The biggest mistake people make is trying to become a perfect Buddhist overnight. They read about monks who meditate for hours and think, "I should do that." They learn about elaborate practices and think they need to do everything at once. This is a recipe for failure. The Buddha taught gradual training. You start where you are with what you can actually do, and you build gradually. If you can only meditate for 3 minutes, start there. If you can only remember to be mindful once a day, start there. If you can only practice compassion with your cat, start there. Think of it like physical exercise. You don't start by running a marathon. You walk around the block. Then you jog a bit. Then you run short distances. You build capacity over time. Spiritual practice is the same. Be honest about your current capacity. Don't compare yourself to people who've been practicing for decades. Don't imagine you should be somewhere other than where you are. This is where you are. This is your starting point. Honor it.
creating a daily practice. Consistency matters more than duration. 5 minutes every day is more valuable than an hour once a week. You're training your mind, and training requires regular repetition. Here's a simple daily practice structure you can start with. Morning, 5 to 10 minutes. Sit quietly when you first wake up before checking your phone. Follow your breath for a few minutes. Set an intention for the day, not a goal to achieve, but a quality to embody. May I be present today. May I meet difficulty with patience. May I be kind to myself and others. Throughout the day, choose one activity to do mindfully each day. Maybe it's drinking your morning coffee, really tasting it, feeling the warmth of the cup, being present with it. Maybe it's walking to your car, feeling each step, seeing what you see, being here. One thing done with full presence. Evening, 5 to 10 minutes. Before bed, sit quietly again. Review your day without judgment. What went well? What was difficult? What did you learn? Can you forgive yourself for your mistakes and appreciate yourself for your efforts? End with gratitude. 3 things you're grateful for from the day, even small things. That's it. 20 minutes total, split into 3 parts. This is sustainable. You can do this every day. And these 20 minutes will gradually transform your life more than occasional intensive practices. Dealing with resistance. You will resist your practice. This is guaranteed. Some days you won't want to meditate. Some days you'll find excuses. Some days you'll forget entirely. This is normal. The practice is not about never missing, it's about beginning again. When you notice resistance, investigate it with curiosity rather than judgment. What's underneath the resistance? Are you avoiding something uncomfortable? Are you tired? Are you discouraged? Are you trying too hard? Sometimes resistance is wisdom. If you're exhausted, maybe you need rest more than meditation. If you're forcing practice in a grim, joyless way, maybe you need to lighten up. Listen to the resistance. But often, resistance is just the mind's habitual patterns asserting themselves. The mind doesn't like change. It will create all sorts of reasons why you shouldn't practice today. When you recognize this, you can gently but firmly return to practice, not as a punishment, but as an act of self-care. A helpful phrase, I don't feel like practicing, and I'm going to practice anyway. Both things can be true. You honor the feeling without being controlled by it. Working with meditation challenges. Let's address common meditation challenges directly because these will come up. My mind won't stop thinking. Good news, it's not supposed to. The mind produces thoughts. That's what it does. Meditation isn't about stopping thoughts. It's about changing your relationship with thoughts. When you notice you're thinking, that's not failure, that's success. That's mindfulness. Gently return to the breath. Do this 10,000 times if necessary. That's the practice. I'm too restless to sit still. Try walking meditation instead. Walk slowly, feeling each step. Or try shorter sits, even 3 minutes. Or practice mindfulness during movement, yoga, tai chi, washing dishes. Not everyone needs to sit on a cushion. Find what works for you. I fall asleep when I meditate. This usually means you're sleep deprived. Get more sleep. Also, try meditating at different times of day. Try opening your eyes slightly instead of closing them. Try sitting in a chair instead of lying down. And sometimes, if you're exhausted, falling asleep during meditation might be exactly what you need. Nothing is happening. I'm not feeling peaceful. The expectation of peace is creating tension. Peace isn't a feeling you achieve, it's what remains when you stop struggling. Also, you are changing, just gradually. Neuroplasticity research shows that meditation physically changes the brain, but it takes time. Trust the process, even when you don't see immediate results.
I'm just sitting here bored. Boredom is actually a great meditation object.
What does boredom feel like? Where do you feel it in your body? What's underneath it? Often, boredom is resistance to being present. We're so used to constant stimulation that simply being with ourselves feels intolerable. This is revealing. Stay with the boredom. Investigate it. This is the practice. Meditation is bringing up difficult emotions. This is common and actually a sign that practice is working. You're becoming aware of what was already there, beneath your distractions. Don't force yourself through traumatic material alone. Work with a therapist if needed, but recognize that feeling your feelings, even difficult ones, is part of healing. Meditation doesn't create these emotions, it illuminates what was hidden. Integrating practice into daily life. The real practice isn't on the meditation cushion, it's in your life. How do you bring mindfulness to driving, to eating, to working, to relationships? Mindful transitions. Use transitions as mindfulness bells. When you close your laptop, take one breath. When you hang up the phone, take one breath. When you stop at a red light, take one breath. These tiny pauses bring you back to presence throughout the day. STOP practice. When you're overwhelmed, use this acronym. Stop what you're doing, take a breath, observe what's happening, thoughts, feelings, sensations. Proceed with awareness. This creates a gap between stimulus and response. Mindful communication. Before speaking, pause. Is what you're about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? This simple filter prevents so much unnecessary suffering in relationships. Difficult person practice. Choose one difficult person in your life. Before interacting with them, take a moment to set an intention. May I see them clearly. May I respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. May I remember they're suffering too. This doesn't make them less difficult, but it changes how you meet the difficulty. End of day review. Before bed, review your day. When were you on autopilot? When were you present? When did you react unconsciously? When did you respond consciously? This reflection deepens learning without judgment. Finding community and teachers. The Buddha emphasized Sangha, spiritual community, as one of the 3 jewels of Buddhism, along with the Buddha, the teacher, and the Dharma, the teachings. You're not meant to do this alone. Look for a local meditation group or Buddhist center. Most offer beginner-friendly sessions. You don't have to convert to Buddhism or adopt beliefs you don't hold. Just sit with others. There's something powerful about collective practice. If you can't find local community, online sanghas exist. Virtual meditation groups, forums, courses. The connection matters, even if it's digital. Consider working with a teacher. This doesn't mean you need a guru who controls your life. It means finding someone with more experience who can guide your practice, answer questions, and help you through obstacles. Many Buddhist teachers offer one-on-one consultations, even remotely. Be discerning about teachers. A good teacher points you toward your own wisdom rather than making you dependent on them. They live what they teach. They're transparent about their own practice and limitations. They don't claim special powers or demand unquestioning obedience. Trust your instincts. Retreats and intensive practice. At some point, you might want to deepen your practice through a meditation retreat. Retreats can be powerful. Days or weeks dedicated entirely to practice, away from ordinary life. Start small, a day-long retreat, then a weekend, then longer if it serves you. Retreats intensify both the insights and the challenges. You'll face yourself without distraction. This can be uncomfortable, but it's incredibly clarifying. Not everyone needs retreats. Some people deepen through consistent daily practice. But if you feel called to it, research retreat centers in your tradition, read reviews, understand what you're signing up for. Sustaining practice through life changes. Life will change. You'll get busy, you'll face crises, you'll have periods where practice feels impossible. This is when practice matters most, and also when it's hardest to maintain. During difficult periods, reduce your practice to something sustainable rather than abandoning it entirely. Can't do 20 minutes? Do 5. Can't sit formally? Just take 3 conscious breaths throughout the day. Can't follow your full routine? Keep one element. The key is not to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Some practice is infinitely better than no practice. And when you maintain even a thread of practice through difficult times, it's easier to return to fuller practice when life stabilizes. Remember, practice supports life, not the other way around. If your practice is making life harder, something's wrong. Adjust. Be flexible. The goal is wisdom and peace in life, not becoming a meditation robot. Measuring progress. Here's a paradox. You need to practice without grasping for results, but you also want to know if it's working. How do you measure progress in something that's about letting go of achievement? Look for these signs. You notice more quickly when you're reactive. You recover more quickly when you're upset. You have more space between stimulus and response. You're more comfortable with discomfort. You take things less personally. You're kinder to yourself and others. You're more okay with not being okay. You appreciate simple moments more. You're less driven by constant craving. You're more at peace, not because life is perfect, but because you're meeting it differently. Also, don't compare your inside to other people's outsides. You don't know what others are experiencing internally. Your path is your path. Your progress is your progress. When practice feels dry. Sometimes practice feels alive, meaningful, transformative. Other times it feels dry, mechanical, pointless. Both are normal. In Zen, there's a saying, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The point is that practice is practice. Some days it feels extraordinary. Some days it's just what you do. Both are valuable. During dry periods, you're building the muscle of commitment. You're learning to show up without needing constant rewards. You're developing the stability that will support you when life gets chaotic. Also, dry periods often precede breakthroughs. You're integrating previous insights, even when it doesn't feel like anything is happening. Trust the process. Making it your own. Finally, remember that these are suggestions, not commandments. Buddhism has many schools, many approaches, many practices. What works for a Tibetan monk might not work for you. What works for your friend might not work for you. Take what's useful, leave what isn't. Adapt practices to fit your life. The Buddha himself said not to accept his teachings based on authority, but to test them in your own experience. Your practice should feel like it supports you, not like a burden or obligation. It should bring more ease to your life, not more stress. If it doesn't, adjust. Be flexible. The goal is wisdom and peace in life, not becoming a meditation robot.
Conclusion. The peace that's always been here. We've journeyed through Buddhist teachings on finding peace when life doesn't go your way. We've explored the Four Noble Truths, impermanence, non-self, mindfulness, equanimity, compassion, letting go, and the middle way. We've looked at practical applications for disappointment, uncertainty, loss, betrayal, chronic difficulty, and inner turmoil. But here's the paradox at the heart of it all. Peace isn't something you find, it's something you uncover. It's been here all along, obscured by confusion, craving, and resistance. The Buddha's enlightenment wasn't gaining something new, it was removing the obstacles that prevented him from seeing what was always true. When the clouds of ignorance cleared, what remained was peace. Not peace as opposed to chaos, but peace within chaos. Not peace that depends on circumstances, but peace that's your fundamental nature. Think of it like this. Imagine you're swimming in the ocean, and you're being tossed by waves. You're panicking, struggling, exhausting yourself trying to fight the waves. But underneath the waves, just a few feet down, the water is calm. It's always calm down there. The chaos is only on the surface.
That's what Buddhist practice reveals. You're not trying to create peace, you're learning to sink below the surface chaos to the peace that's always been there. You're learning to identify with the spacious awareness that holds all experience rather than with the content of experience itself. The practice is the path. There's a saying in Buddhism, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Similarly, there is no way to peace. Peace is the way. Every moment of mindfulness is peace. Every moment of compassion is peace. Every moment of letting go is peace. You're not practicing in order to become peaceful someday. You're practicing peace itself right now. When you bring awareness to this breath, that's peace. When you respond to difficulty with wisdom rather than reactivity, that's peace. When you hold your suffering with compassion, that's peace. When you accept this moment as it is, that's peace. The goal isn't someday, somewhere else when circumstances are different. The goal is here, now, in this breath, this moment, this life exactly as it is. You already have everything you need. The Buddha taught that everyone has Buddha nature. The potential for awakening is already within you. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. You just need to remember what you've always been. All the chaos, all the times life doesn't go your way, all the suffering, none of it has damaged your fundamental nature. Like the sky that's never damaged by storms, like the screen that's never damaged by the movie playing on it, your awareness has never been damaged by the content passing through it. This is incredibly liberating. No matter what you've experienced, no matter how chaotic your life is right now, no matter how lost you feel, you're not actually lost. You're right here. You've always been here. You just forgot to notice. The gift of chaos. Here's something beautiful. Chaos is not the enemy of peace. Chaos is the invitation to peace. When everything is going your way, you don't need to practice. You coast on circumstances. But when life doesn't go your way, when you're forced to face uncertainty, disappointment, loss, difficulty, that's when you discover what you're really made of. Every difficulty is a Dharma gate, a doorway to deeper understanding. Every time life doesn't go your way, you have an opportunity to practice what the Buddha taught. Can you be present with discomfort? Can you observe your reactivity without being controlled by it? Can you let go of how you wished things were and accept how they are? Can you find the peace that doesn't depend on circumstances? The chaos of life is not a mistake. It's not punishment. It's not evidence that something has gone wrong. It's the curriculum. It's exactly what you need to wake up. The journey continues. Buddhist practice is not about reaching a destination where you're done, where you've mastered everything, where life finally goes your way permanently. That's another illusion. The journey continues. You'll keep facing difficulties. You'll keep getting knocked down. You'll keep forgetting and remembering, losing your center and finding it again. But something does change. You get better at meeting life. You get faster at noticing when you're resisting. You get more skilled at returning to balance. You get more compassionate with yourself when you struggle. You get more okay with not being okay. You get more comfortable with the fundamental uncertainty and chaos of existence. And gradually, almost imperceptibly, peace stops being something you're trying to achieve and becomes something you increasingly are. Not because circumstances have changed, but because you've changed your relationship with circumstances. An invitation. The Buddha ended his first teaching by saying that he had pointed to the path, but each person had to walk it themselves. No one can do this for you. No one can give you peace. No teacher, no practice, no circumstances can make you peaceful. Only you can choose moment by moment to practice awareness, acceptance, compassion, and letting go. So I leave you with an invitation. Begin now. Not when circumstances are better, not when you're more ready, not when life finally goes your way. Now, in this moment, however chaotic, however difficult, however ordinary. Take a breath. Feel it. That's mindfulness. Notice what you're feeling. Allow it to be here. That's acceptance. Speak kindly to yourself about whatever you're experiencing. That's compassion. Release your grip on how you think things should be. That's letting go. That's the practice. That's the path. That's peace. Not peace instead of chaos, peace within chaos. Not happiness instead of suffering, wisdom in the midst of suffering. Not life going your way, peace regardless of which way life goes. The Buddha's final words, according to tradition, were, "All conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with awareness." He was reminding his students one last time, everything changes, nothing lasts, and your response to this truth determines your peace. So strive on, practice on, keep coming back to this moment, this breath, this precious, messy, beautiful, difficult life. Keep letting go. Keep opening your heart. Keep showing up with awareness and compassion. Keep finding the peace that was never actually lost. Because peace was never dependent on life going your way. Peace is what emerges when you stop demanding that it does. And that peace, that unshakable, circumstance-independent, always available peace is your birthright, your true nature, your home. It's been waiting for you all along. Welcome back.